Alan lives in the Cradle, a ruined lower city where people survive on the scraps falling from Celestia, a magical city floating in the sky. While Alan has memories of a past life where he died of illness, in this world, he is just an ordinary guy without magic. His only talent is a strange ability to see a sparkle inside junked magical items, which tells him if they can still be repaired or used. He spends his days scavenging in the Valley of Abandoned Capital with his childhood friend Lyra. They take their finds to an old mechanic named Mold who buys their junk. Mold is impressed by Alan's high success rate in finding working parts, though Alan insists he's just looking at them normally. Since they are both orphans, Alan lets Lyra manage their money and they dream of one day buying a house together. One day, Alan visits Noelle, a top hostess at a local club, to sell a repaired wand. Noelle warns him that having a unique talent in a dangerous place like the Cradle makes him a target. She explains that while some people in the lower city have magic power, true magic is a terrifying force reserved for the elites in Celestia. On his way home, Alan is cornered by thugs. He manages to escape when some ash he throws at them mysteriously sparks into fire, though he doesn't understand why. Later, Mold takes Alan to a magic black market. There, a shady merchant tries to sell a fake holy relic ring that supposedly heals wounds. Alan notices the ring lacks a sparkle and calls it out. A mysterious red-haired woman steps in and proves the ring is a cheap fake. Mold is now certain that Alan's eyes are special. The next day, while scavenging alone, Alan hears a loud noise from above. Instead of the usual junk, he sees a person falling from the sky like a meteor. The person crashes into the valley with a massive thud right in front of him. The person falling from the sky crashed with a loud bang, kicking up dust and junk everywhere. As the smoke cleared, a woman stood there completely unhurt despite the massive drop. It was the same red-haired woman who had helped Alan against the thugs the day before. She laughed, calling her entrance cool, and casually asked Alan if he liked older women before admitting she was just joking. She introduced herself as Belle. When Alan mentioned he scavenges and repairs magic items to survive, she watched him closely. Belle pulled out a cigarette and lit it using fire from her fingertip. Alan was shocked, realizing she was using actual magic. Belle admitted she might have overdone it with the flashy entrance, but confirmed she is a genius mage. Excited to meet a real mage, Alan asked if he could call her master. She agreed, finding the title likable. Alan then asked her about the sparkle he sees inside magic item. Belle was confused, saying she couldn't see any sparkle, though she could sense if an item worked by flowing mana through it. She realized Alan might be seeing magic circuits, the internal structure of magic, and warned him to keep this ability a secret. Over the following days, Belle began visiting the valley often. Instead of teaching magic, she spent her time playing baseball with Alan using a steel pipe as a bat. During one game, she threw a magical breaking ball that dropped suddenly, but Alan managed to hit it perfectly. Belle was stunned by his reflexes and good eyes, promising to use magic to strengthen her body next time to win. Alan enjoyed these moments, finding life much more fun with her around. One day, Alan went to the Adventurers Guild to trade in his finds. The receptionist, Mia, praised him for always bringing in high-quality working items. On his way out, he ran into Belle again. She was in a hurry and dumped a companion on him, telling Alan to look after her before running off. The companion was a girl named Tia, who had long silver hair and beautiful blue eyes. She apologized for Belle's wild behavior and the two introduced themselves. While they were talking, Alan's childhood friend Lyra arrived. Seeing Alan with a beautiful stranger, Lyra got visibly jealous and suspicious. Tia tried to de-escalate the situation, but the air felt tense until Lyra eventually left for work, reminding Alan that she was making dinner. Soon after, Belle returned, thanked Alan for watching Tia, and the two mages left together. The next day, Alan visited the old mechanic, Mold. Impressed by Alan's consistent results, Mold offered him a formal job at the repair shop. Alan happily accepted, knowing it was more stable than scavenging. Mold explained that magic items are the backbone of their world's infrastructure and safety, so the work required total honesty and responsibility. For his first task, Mold asked Alan to deliver a repaired item to a specific location. Alan arrived at a place called Club Rose, a high-end club decorated with roses. The guards were suspicious of a kid being there, but Noelle, the top hostess, spotted him and brought him inside. The other hostesses crowded around Alan, calling him cute, which made him shy. Noelle took him to a private room, gave him tea and cookies, and thanked him for the delivery. She was impressed he was now working for Mold, and promised to bring her own items to him for repair. Before he left, she gave him a warm hug, making Alan feel a motherly kindness he had never known in either of his lives. Back at the shop, Mold questioned Alan about his lack of magic. He found it impossible that someone without mana could repair magic items so perfectly. Alan explained he just connects the sparkle, which left Mold baffled but satisfied with the results. Later, Mold sent Alan to the Adventurers Guild to deliver 5 repaired swords. After finishing the delivery, Alan was heading home through the cold, ashy streets when a tall, intimidating man in a black coat stopped him. The man had cold blue eyes and a powerful aura. He introduced himself as serious and asked for directions to Club Rose. Alan pointed the way and Sirius thanked him, noting Alan's name before leaving. At the club, Sirius met with Noel in private. He was a high-ranking individual there to handle some business. Noel showed him the magic wand Alan had repaired. Sirius, an expert, was shocked. He noticed that while the outside was basic, the internal magic circuits were restored with master-level precision, something even the best mages in the floating city of Celestia would struggle to do. He demanded to know who did it. Noel was hesitant to protect Alan, but Sirius swore on his honor as a mage that he wouldn't harm the creator. When Noel revealed it was just a young boy named Alan, Sirius was stunned, realizing he had just met a world-class talent on the street without even knowing it. Sirius paid Noel a generous reward for the information about Alan and left the club in a hurry. Noel watched him go, worried about Alan's safety, but Sirius reassured her that he wasn't going to harm the boy. Looking up at the sky, Sirius muttered about how talent can appear anywhere, even in the ruins of the lower city, though he wondered if a child like Alan was truly prepared for the weight of such power. That night, while tinkering with junk before bed, Alan felt the world tilt. His consciousness sank deep into a vision where he saw something beyond the usual sparkles inside item. He perceived 3 distinct structures or worlds hidden within the essence of magic. He accidentally woke up Lyra with his surprised shout, but he kept the strange vision to himself, deciding to ask his master about it the next day. When Alan met Belle in the valley and asked if magic was made of 3 worlds, her playful attitude vanished instantly. She looked at him with a frozen, serious expression, asking him to repeat what he just said. After calming down with a cigarette, she confirmed that Alan had perceived the fundamental structure of magic. She explained that while most people seek talent and fail, Alan had been blessed with something massive. However, she warned him that such a huge talent could bring misery. When she asked what he wanted to do with this power, Alan didn't hesitate. He said he wanted to use it to help the people who had taken care of him, like Mold, Noel, Mia, and Lyra. Belle was touched by his answer, calling it his source, the core of his being. She decided it was time to stop holding back and finally teach him magic properly so he wouldn't be consumed by his own power. After she left, she talked with her companion, Tia. Belle revealed that she is one of only 5 special grade mages in the world. She explained that while schools teach that magic has 2 structures, there is a 3rd god-tier realm called the magical critical point. It took Belle until she was 18 to reach it, yet Alan, a boy with no mana or education, could already see it. She realized his talent was deeper and more alien than her own. Over the next week, Alan worked hard at Mold's shop. His repairs were so perfect that adventurers at the guild started noticing their gear felt better than when it was brand new. Alan felt a deep sense of purpose in helping others through his work. Eventually, the day came for his first real magic lesson. Belle met him at the junk pile and explained the concept of a source or genin. She described it as the shape of the soul, a special structure within a person that allows them to turn mana into magic. To demonstrate, Belle showed him her own source. The junk-filled valley transformed as glowing lights rose from the scrap metal like stars filling the sky. She revealed her source is the stars. She told Alan that while magic is a technical skill, he must follow his instincts and his own soul. Though she had to leave for a while, she promised they would meet again. Back at the shop, Alan's focus reached new level. He was so absorbed in his work that he didn't realize he had been working for 6 hours straight. When the shop ran low on magic ore, Alan volunteered to gather more from the dangerous northern ruin. While scavenging in a collapsed building, he ran into a tall, thin man in a tattered coat named Roke. Alan immediately noticed that Roke's internal sparkle was distorted and broken. Without thinking, Alan asked if he was a maid. Startled and suspicious, Roke drew his sword and pinned Alan to the ground, demanding to know if he was an assassin from the upper city. Alan showed him the ore and explained his ability to see the sparkles inside people. Roke was stunned, realizing the boy could see his source, a feat unheard of even in Celestia. Roke calmed down and told Alan to stay away for his own safety, but Alan, being friendly, returned the next day with a sandwich. He eventually convinced Roke to teach him how to fight. Roke was impressed by Alan's reflexes and how quickly he mastered knife techniques. During their training, Roke revealed his past. He was once a prestigious teacher in the floating city, but when his source broke, he lost everything: his job, his family, and his home, and was forced to live in the slum. Alan, undeterred by the sad story, told Roke he was a great teacher and asked to keep learning from him. Moved by the boy's kindness, Roke agreed to continue his training. Roke's home was destroyed in a collapse, so Alan invited the former teacher to live with him and Lyra. Though hesitant at first, Roke moved in. Life at the small house became lively with 3 people. Lyra cooked delicious meals, and the group bonded quickly. Roke began teaching Lyra advanced math and reading while Alan continued tinkering with junk. Roke was amazed by Alan's repairs, noting that his ability to optimize magic circuits was better than anyone he had seen in the floating city of Celestia. Alan told Roke that his master, Bell, believed he had a source. Hearing Bell's name, Roke realized Alan was being mentored by one of the world's strongest mages. The three felt like a real family, with Roke teaching Alan how to fight and helping him with his studies. One evening, a high-ranking mage named Sirius intercepted Alan on his way home. Using ice magic, Sirius created a frozen barrier to isolate them. He showed Alan a wand the boy had repaired for Noel and praised his world-class talent. Sirius offered to take Alan away from the slums to Celestia, believing the lower city was too small for his potential. Suddenly, Belle crashed through the barrier, falling from the sky to protect her student. She confronted Sirius, revealing he was an elite from the Magic Ministry's Public Safety Bureau. Belle and Sirius argued over Alan's future, but Sirius ultimately left the choice to Alan. Alan declined the offer to go to the floating city, choosing to stay with his friends and family in the cradle. Sirius left peacefully, but warned that destiny would eventually pull Alan toward his true path. Later, Alan met Tia, Belle's companion, at the junk piles. She wanted to try playing baseball after hearing how much fun Belle had. Alan taught her how to swing a steel pipe, and after a few tries, she finally hit the ball. Overjoyed, she hugged Alan, making both of them blush. When Alan got home, Lyra immediately smelled Tia's scent on him. She got jealous and demanded that Alan report to her whenever he met Tia in the future. Roke jokingly warned Alan that while Lyra was scary when angry, he should learn to keep some secrets. Despite the drama, Alan felt completely happy with his life, wanting nothing more than to stay in the slums forever. Lyra, however, felt a lingering sadness. She remembered meeting Alan at the orphanage when they were children. He was the only one who spoke to her, and even then he was obsessed with Sparkle's inside junk. When they left the orphanage with nothing, Alan had taken her hand and promised they would be okay. Now, seeing how everyone from adventurers to elite mages was noticing Alan's incredible talent, she feared he would eventually leave her behind for the world above. One night, while watching Alan sleep, she realized his eyes were fixed on a distant, bright future. She hoped these peaceful nights would last just a little longer, knowing that one day, Alan's power would carry him far away. Alan started working as a formal repairman at Mold's shop. His skills were so good that Mold began splitting the difficult tasks with him. While delivering items to the Adventurers Guild, Alan noticed the guild receptionist, Mia, was thrilled because adventurers loved his perfect repairs. Despite his success, Alan started feeling that the cradle was a broken world. He realized that just repairing items wouldn't change the underlying misery of the slum. During a brief moment of reflection, he felt a strange sensation of falling, realizing he might be seeing his own source for the first time. On his way home, Alan was confronted by Gil, the leader of the Dusk Guard. Gil tried to bully him as usual, but Alan, trusting his instincts, dodged the attack. For the first time, Alan stood up for himself, declaring he was a repairman, not trash. Enraged, Gil tried to kill him, but Alan could see the flow of magic and movements perfectly. Before things escalated, Roke arrived, forcing Gil to retreat. Roke promised to protect Alan, but Alan realized he was changing, his body was reacting to magic on its own. Meanwhile, Gil was losing his mind with jealousy over Alan's talent. A mysterious woman in a black coat approached him in the shadows, offering him the power he craved. She infused a dark source into his soul, granting him the ability to use magic. Driven by his new power and the woman's urge to follow his instincts, Gil set out for revenge. The next day, Alan delivered a repaired magic lamp to Noel at Club Rose. Noel mentioned that strange, bloodless corpses were being found in the slums, likely the work of a mage using dark magic. She warned Alan to be careful. Later, Alan met Belle in the Junk Valley for a final baseball game. Belle used magic to strengthen her body and throw incredible pitches, but Alan focused on the flow of her mana and managed to hit a home run. After the game, Belle revealed she was leaving for the floating city of Celestia. She told Alan that while they were parting for now, their sources would eventually guide them back to each other. Back at home, Alan noticed Lyra's healing ability had become much stronger. When he showed this to Roke, the former teacher realized that Lyra wasn't just moving mana, she was using actual magic. Roke offered to train her as well, making Alan happy that his family was growing stronger together. One evening, Lyra realized she forgot something at work. Roke insisted on walking her there because of the recent murders. On their way back, they were intercepted by Gil. He looked ragged and insane, bragging about how he would kill them and show their heads to Alan. Roke stepped in to protect Lyra, but when he tried to strike, his sword was blocked by a shield of dark, solidified blood covering Gil's arm. Roke realized that Gil had gained a source related to blood and was the one behind the recent killings. Recognizing the danger, Roke prepared to fight the powered-up Gil to protect Lyra. At the house, Alan grew worried when they didn't return. Sensing a turning point in his life, he ignored his instructions to stay put. Guided by a strange feeling in his soul, Alan stepped out into the cold night to find his friends, knowing that his destiny was finally beginning to move. Roke fought desperately, but Gil's new blood magic was too strong. Gil slashed Lyra's leg to keep her from escaping, mocking them by saying he wanted to show their corpses to Alan. Just as Roke prepared for a final suicidal charge, Alan arrived. He wasn't the same. He looked at his injured friends and calmly told Lyra to focus on healing Roke while he handled the fight. Gil laughed, claiming his chosen power made him superior to trash like Alan. As Gil attacked with blades made of hardened blood, Alan realized he could see the flow of magic perfectly. He realized his sparkle ability wasn't just for fixing junk, it was his soul's way of understanding the structure of the world. In that moment, Alan finally reached his source. Deep in his mind, he met a version of himself who warned him that once he opened the door to magic, his peaceful life would end forever. Alan didn't hesitate, he chose to protect his family. Alan awakened his unique magic, Reincarnation, the Replicator. Nearby, Sirius and Belle watched in shock. They realized Alan was doing the impossible, he was copying their high-level magic. Alan manifested Belle's starfield to rain down lasers and Sirius's ice calamity to block Gil's strikes. He wasn't just mimicking them, he was adapting their powers to fit his own body perfectly. The fight turned one-sided. Gil, driven mad by the gap in their talent, tried to crush Alan with a massive blood sword. He managed to cut off Alan's lower arm, but Alan didn't flinch. He replicated Lyra's healing magic to instantly regrow his limb and punched Gil right in the face. Using the Starfield power one last time, Alan blasted Gil with a wave of light. Gil's stolen power backfired, causing his body to melt into black smoke until he vanished completely. Alan collapsed from exhaustion into Belle's arms and fell into a deep sleep. When he woke up at home, he saw Lyra, Roke, Belle, and Sirius waiting for him. Alan realized that simply being a repairman wasn't enough to fix the broken world of the slum. He announced his decision. I'm going to the city in the sky. He wanted to become a master magic engineer to create tools that could actually change the lives of the people in the lower city. Sirius agreed to sponsor him, though he warned Alan that the path would be hell. Since a person from the slums needs a mountain of paperwork to enter Celestia, Sirius took charge of the logistics, mocking Belle for being too broke and messy to handle such a big responsibility. He decided Alan would study under him for a year before skipping grades to enter the elite magic academy. Alan spent his final 3 days saying goodbye. He visited the Adventurers Guild, the hostesses at Club Rose, and his boss, Mole. Everyone was sad to see him go, but proud of how far he had come. On the day of departure, as the floating city's transport arrived, Mold gave him one last piece of advice: stay passionate. After a final tearful goodbye to his friends and his teacher Roke, Alan prepared to leave the only home he had ever known to start his new life among the elites. Roke pulled Alan into a tight hug, thanking the boy for giving him a reason to look forward to life again. He warned Alan that the world above was harsh but expressed his absolute faith in him. Finally, it was Lyra's turn. For 3 days, she had been quiet and gloomy, but now she stood before him with tears streaming down her face. She reminded him of how he had always been her light, from the orphanage to their hardest days in the slum. She admitted that while she used to want to keep him by her side forever, she realized she couldn't just stay behind him anymore. She vowed to work harder than ever so that one day, she could stand right next to him again and help him change the world. Alan, moved to tears, realized he only survived the slums because of her. He felt a sharp pain at the thought of life without Lyra, but he steeled his resolve to move forward. Lyra handed him a handmade bracelet woven from thin thread, a parting gift filled with her feelings. They shared a final tearful smile, promising this wasn't a permanent goodbye. As Alan walked toward the transport, the voices of the people he loved, Mold, the adventurers and his friends, cheered him on, wishing him luck. Sirius waited for him at the transport. He gave Alan one last chance to back out, warning him that the upper city was a den of monsters where talent alone wasn't enough to survive. Alan wiped his tears and nodded firmly. With a bright flash of light, they were transported from the ruins of the cradle to the floating city of Celestia. As they left, a mysterious woman in a black coat appeared at the spot where Gil had died. She didn't care about Gil's death, viewing it as a failed experiment, but she was fascinated by Alan's awakening. She decided to follow him to the upper city to see what he would do next. In an instant, the scenery changed. Alan stood in a world that looked nothing like the rusted metal and ash of his home. The sky was clear blue, the streets were paved with amber stone, and glowing magic crystals decorated the building. The people looked proud and lived in luxury. Belle and Tia prepared to head their own way. Belle promised to check in on Alan regularly, while Tia thanked him for their time together. After they left, Sirius took Alan to the Ministry of Magic to handle a mountain of paperwork: ID registration, residency permits, and academic records. Once the legal work was done, Sirius brought Alan to his massive estate on a quiet hill. At the mansion, they were met by Alina, a young woman with short chestnut hair dressed as a maid. She greeted Sirius with respect, but gave Alan a cold, suspicious look. Sirius explained that Alan would be living there for a year to prepare for the Magic Academy entrance exams, and instructed Alina to handle his education. Left alone with Alan, Alina didn't hide her dislike. She told him she had no patience for slum kids and doubted he had any real talent. She demanded to know his source. When Alan told her it was replication, she was skeptical until he demonstrated it. He unleashed a combined field of Belle's stars and Sirius's ice magic. Alina stood frozen in shock, realizing he was the student of a special grade mage and possessed terrifying potential. To test him further, she asked him to copy her own magic. Alan focused on the sparkle within her and instantly manifested her water-based magic, clear water. However, the strain caused a sharp pain in his head and the magic cancelled out. Alina realized that Alan didn't just copy the spell, he copied the source, and the mana itself, which was an incredible burden on his body. Her attitude shifted from hostility to professional intensity. She laid out a brutal study schedule: magic theory, engineering, history, and social etiquette. She warned him that entering the elite academy 2 years early as a skip-level student required blood, sweat, and absolute dedication. For the next month, Alan lived in a blur of books and training. He studied from dawn until late at night, pushing himself until he was dizzy from mana depletion. Seeing his desperation, Alina began to soften, occasionally showing a motherly concern and reminding him that resting is also part of training. Sirius also checked in, praising his progress but warning him not to confuse recklessness with bravery. One night, after an exhausting day of study, Alina brought a warm blanket to Alan's room. Though she claimed it was just logical and administrative care, her kindness was clear. As Alan drifted off to sleep in his soft bed, he touched the bracelet Lyra gave him. He missed the dusty, loud life of the slums, but he whispered a promise to the quiet night that he would keep working hard for everyone he left behind. Alina, watching over him, reflected on her own past. She had been a top student who thought she was a genius until she joined the Public Safety Bureau and realized she couldn't keep up with the real monsters like Sirius. She had worked herself into a collapse before Sirius offered her a job as his maid to recover. Now, looking at Alan, she saw a level of talent that far surpassed her own, and she felt a new sense of purpose in making sure this boy succeeded where others might fail. Alan's training under Alina became a battle of wills. Initially, Alina resented him, believing a kid from the slums would crumble under the pressure of elite competition. She assigned him a mountain of work, secretly hoping he would fail or quit. However, her cynicism turned to shock when she found Alan studying straight through the night, greeting the morning with a smile and offering to help with breakfast. Seeing his absolute refusal to give up, even when his body collapsed or he felt sick from mana exhaustion, Alina realized his resolve was unlike anything she had ever seen. Sirius noticed Alina's growing obsession with Alan's progress and showed her a magic wand Alan had repaired back in the cradle. When Alina saw the flawless, beautiful internal circuits, she was stunned. Sirius explained that while elites are raised to compete and tear others down, Alan's power grew from a place of kindness. He told Alina that they both had much to learn from the boy. This talk changed Alina. She stopped being a harsh warden and became a devoted mentor, even taking time to share tea and cookies with him to ensure he rested. During their breaks, Alan shared his past, the orphanage, his life scavenging junk with Lyra and the people who supported him. He explained that his source wasn't for himself. He wanted to learn magic engineering to change the world so everyone in the slums could live safely and happily. Moved to tears by his selflessness, Alina vowed to dedicate herself to his future. She even spent her own nights studying to earn a first-class magic engineer license just so she could properly teach him the advanced subjects he needed. 6 months passed, and Alan's growth was terrifying. He grew taller, and his reflexes sharpened to the point where he finally managed to land a hit on Sirius during their weekend duel. Even Belle, his original master, would drop by for magical baseball game. She used these games to train Alan's ability to read the flow of the world, though she eventually stopped coming as often after Alan began hitting every single one of her magic pitches out of the park. As the entrance exam for the prestigious Celestia Magic Academy approached, Alina focused Alan's training on magic engineering. She realized that Alan's understanding of magic circuits was already beyond the academy level. He wasn't just learning. He was confirming things he already knew instinctively. Sirius and Alina shared a private concern. Talent this massive would eventually attract the Replicas, a dangerous dark magic organization. To prepare him, Sirius intensified their combat training so Alan could protect himself when the time came. On the day of the exam, a year after arriving in the Sky City, Alan was calm and ready. Alina was a nervous wreck, her hands shaking as she saw him off, but Alan comforted her, promising to show the results of their hard work. With Sirius's encouragement and Lyra's bracelet on his wrist for luck, Alan stepped into the massive, beautiful grounds of the academy. He walked toward the testing hall with total confidence, ready to turn his dreams into reality. The entrance exam for the Celestia Magic Academy followed a strict schedule. Written tests in the morning, practical exams in the afternoon, and a specialized engineering test in the evening. Alan sat for the written portion first. Thanks to a year of intense study, he breezed through the high-level questions on general education and magic theory, finishing just as time was called. During lunch, he found a supportive note from Alina tucked into his meal, which boosted his spirits. While walking through the hallway after lunch, a wealthy-looking noble boy with blonde hair and blue eyes bumped into him. Seeing Alan's small stature, the noble mocked him, assuming he was only taking the exam for fun and wouldn't pass. Alan ignored the taunt and headed to his practical exam. The examiner, a stern man with glasses, seemed unimpressed by Alan's slum background and young age. For the practical, Alan had to demonstrate mana control by strengthening his body and creating a mana sphere. He performed perfectly. When the examiner asked where he learned magic, Alan admitted he had only been training for 1 year, which left the man stunned. Next was the combat test. Per Sirius's instructions, Alan pretended his origin power was water, replicating Alina's magic style. He hit every target with precision, though the high-speed finale left him exhausted. The examiner was secretly shocked that a 13-year-old beginner could perform at such a level. Finally, Alan faced the magic engineering exam. The proctor was Alice, a world-class special-grade mage dress. In a flashy gothic dress with mechanical dolls on her shoulders, she gave the students a single task: repair and activate a completely broken, ancient magic tool within 2 hours. Most students found it impossible, but Alan could see the internal structure and the traces of mana that once flowed through it. He didn't just fix the tool, he completely redesigned the internal circuits using his own original theories to make them more efficient. He finished just seconds before the deadline. After the exam, Alice inspected the results. She had intentionally given them a failed masterpiece of hers that even professors couldn't fix, just to see the student's character. However, she was stunned to find that Alan had actually fixed it. His work was so advanced and original that even she couldn't fully understand his logic. Realizing a 13-year-old from the slums had outperformed the world's best experts, she realized Alan was a once-in-a-thousand-year genius who could change the world of magic forever. A week later, the results were posted. Alina was so nervous she couldn't sleep, but when they reached the academy, they found Alan's number 47 on the passing list. Alina burst into tears of joy and hugged him tightly. Back at the house, Sirius congratulated him but warned that this was only the beginning. When the topic of moving into the school dorms came up, Alina gave a long, rapid-fire speech about why Alan should stay at the mansion. She argued that she knew his nutritional needs and safety requirements better than anyone. Eventually, she admitted she just wanted to keep taking care of him because she was worried he might be bullied. Alan agreed to stay at the mansion, much to her delight. On the day of the opening ceremony, Alan dressed in his new silver-trimmed uniform. As he walked to school, he noticed a mechanical rabbit doll gesturing for him to follow. Suddenly, Alice appeared behind him. She revealed that she knew about his connection to Sirius and Alina. Before Alan could ask how, Alice activated her power, Alice Dolls. A pink light covered everything and the world flipped as she pulled Alan into a private magical barrier. Inside the magical barrier, Alice's room was packed with dolls that seemed to watch Alan's every move. Alice, looking obsessed, demanded to know how he repaired the exam tool. Alan explained his complex process of completely redesigning the internal circuits into a fluid structure with self-optimizing layers. His explanation left Alice breathless with excitement, and she immediately tried to recruit him into her private seminar, joking that she would happily keep him in the lab all night if that was what it took. Suddenly, the barrier shattered as Alina arrived, her mana vibrating with anger. She confronted Alice for cornering Alan. After a tense standoff where Alice teased them about their date, Alice eventually backed off, realizing Sirius was also keeping an eye on things. Before leaving, she squeezed Alan's hand and gave him her lab's location, telling him to visit anytime. Alina warned Alan to stay away from Alice, though she accidentally let slip that she was also monitoring him. At the academy, Alan encountered Lloyd von Rewert, a high-ranking noble he had met during the exams. Lloyd mocked Alan's slum background, suggesting his success was just a publicity stunt or due to someone's pity. He warned Alan to know his place and act humble around his superiors. Alan stayed quiet, remembering Alina's warnings about noble pride, and watched as Lloyd's group walked away laughing. During the opening ceremony, Alan was shocked to see his friend from the slums, Tia, walk onto the stage as the top student representative. Her full name was Yuscha von Serafili, a member of the highest-ranking ducal family in the kingdom. Alan panicked, realizing how casually and rudely he had treated such a high-status person in the past. During her speech, Tia spoke about how the academy was a place for true talent to shine regardless of bloodline, which strengthened Alan's resolve to change the world. In his first magic engineering class, Alice revealed to the students that Alan was the only one who had perfectly repaired the ancient tool. This caused a wave of jealousy and suspicion among his classmates, who began distancing themselves from him. During another lecture, a teacher tried to embarrass Alan by asking a difficult third-year level question about conflicting elemental circuits. Alan answered perfectly, explaining the exact materials and structural isolation needed. While the mocking stopped, the isolation grew worse as everyone began treating him like an outcast. One afternoon, a classmate named Theo Nordes approached Alan on the roof. After a clumsy start where she accidentally asked him to go out with her instead of just talk, she revealed she was a huge fan of magic tools and admired his genius. They spent the afternoon in the library discussing engineering. Alan was impressed by the doll she had built, and Theo was blown away by his advanced theories, calling him a true genius. Alan humbly credited his success to the people who supported him. When Alan returned home late, he found a terrifyingly calm Alina waiting for him. She was clearly jealous and protective, questioning him about the gender and family background of his new friend. She gave him a long, intense lecture on how to interact with girls, which left Alan exhausted. Despite the cold shoulder from most students, Alan's friendship with Theo grew. He even started thinking about using his knowledge to build something like the robots from his past life. While eating lunch on the roof one day, Tia appeared. Alan immediately bowed and apologized for his past rudeness, but Tia told him to drop the formalities. She insisted they stay friends and speak casually just like they did in the slums, much to Alan's relief. Tia explained that her family, the Seraphiles house, is one of the top 3 elite families in the Magic City. She invited Alan to her home over the weekend, mentioning that her father was curious about him. After consulting Sirius and Alina, Alan visited the massive estate. He was greeted by a maid and led through a garden of white roses to meet Tia's father, Edgar. Edgar, a man with a heavy and powerful presence, acknowledged Alan's talent as a slum-born student who skipped grades to enter the engineering department. He encouraged Alan to grow his skills in the upper city before leaving the two friends alone. In Tia's room, over tea and cookies, Alan talked about his year of intense study and training. Tia revealed that she had hidden in the slums because her life was in danger. She warned Alan that noble society is not united. It is a world of power struggles and assassinations where even her family's status isn't absolute. She told him to be careful and not to trust other mages or nobles too easily, including herself. When Alan mentioned his new friend Theo, Tia's expression turned sharp and cold, though she asked him to introduce them later. Meanwhile, Edgar met with the master mage Belle. Belle revealed that Alan's true power isn't just water magic, but a rare ability called origin replication, which allows him to copy other magical origin. Edgar realized this talent is legendary and could break the stagnation of the magic world, which had become obsessed with bloodlines and tradition. However, this also makes Alan a prime target for Replicas, a dangerous organization interested in his unique power. Back at school, Alan attended a practical combat class. Lloyd von Rewert, a high-ranking noble who looked down on Alan, challenged him to a duel to prove his superiority. During the fight, Lloyd used powerful lightning magic, which had a natural advantage over Alan's supposed water magic. As the lightning closed in, Alan entered a deep state of focus, seeing the flow of energy in a way he never had before. His movements became fluid and instinctive. In a single step, he closed the distance and pinned Lloyd to the ground, winning the match and leaving the class in shock. The instructor was so impressed he tried to recruit Alan to the magic department, but Alan declined, staying loyal to his engineering goal. Later, Alan asked Alina if her water magic allowed for such extreme physical changes, but she said it didn't. This made Alan realize his replication power might be evolving into something deeper than just copying. The story then shifts to Theo Nordes, a girl from a count's family who always felt out of place in the competitive noble world. Though she was talented, she preferred building dolls and tools over social climbing. During the entrance exam, she had been completely stumped by the broken ancient tool, realizing just how high the ceiling for genius truly was. Theo passed the entrance exam but couldn't stop thinking about the broken magic tool she failed to fix. When she heard rumors about a slum-born student in the engineering department, she assumed he got in through luck, not skill. However, when Professor Alice revealed that Alan was the only one who perfectly repaired the tool, Theo was stunned. She began observing him and noticed that while other students slacked off, Alan studied harder than anyone, treating every lesson like a precious opportunity. Driven by curiosity, Theo finally approached him. As they talked about magic engineering, Alan showed her a tool he was working on. Theo was speechless. Although the outside looked plain, the internal magic circuits were so complex and flawless they surpassed student level. What amazed her most wasn't just his talent, but his humility. Alan wasn't motivated by ego or status, but by pure curiosity and a love for creating things. Seeing his sincere passion made Theo realize he was a true mage, and she found herself deeply drawn to him. She also witnessed Alan's duel with Lloyd von Rewert. Like most students, Theo didn't particularly like Lloyd because he treated people like tools, but his strength as a top-tier noble was undeniable. When Alan defeated him with overwhelming speed and instinct, the entire school fell into a shocked silence. Soon, nasty rumors spread that Alan must be using illegal drugs or doping to win. When her own friends joined in the mocking, Theo finally found her courage. She defended Alan out loud, knowing it would get her kicked out of her social circle. She didn't care, she wanted to live honestly just like him. Back at the mansion, Alan asked Sirius about the third world he glimpsed during his fight. Sirius explained that while most mages only know the starting point and the origin, the elite rank of special grade mages reached a level called the magical critical point. Sirius admitted he hadn't reached it himself, as it requires a level of understanding only geniuses like Belle or Alice possess. The next day, Alan visited Alice's lab to learn more. After Alice locked the door to keep others out, she explained that reaching the critical point is about understanding one's own heart. In the elite world, mages are so obsessed with competition and bloodlines that they kill their own passion, hitting a ceiling. Because Alan grew up in the slums without those pressures, his want and need are perfectly aligned, allowing him to grow at a legendary pace. Their deep conversation was cut short when Alina broke into the lab to rescue Alan, warning Alice to stop cornering him. On the way home, Alina encouraged Alan to stay true to himself and not let the world's complications change his pure heart. Meanwhile, Lloyd was spiraling into madness. His defeat had brought shame to the Rewert name, and the pressure from his family was breaking him. As he trained alone at night, fueled by hatred, a mysterious woman in black appeared in the shadows. She tempted him with the promise of real power, claiming a noble like him shouldn't lose to trash. She touched his chest, injecting a surge of dark mana into his origin. The overwhelming power cleared Lloyd's mind, and he laughed maniacally, feeling he could finally descend his true power. The woman vanished, leaving Lloyd obsessed with using this new gift to destroy Alan. As midterms approached, the atmosphere at the academy turned cold. Alan spent his days in the library with Theo. Trading knowledge, she helped him with general studies while he coached her through advanced magic engineering. They studied late into the evening, both determined to prove their worth in the upcoming exams. Alan's study sessions with Theo continued regularly, though they often ran late. When he told Alina about them, she wasn't worried about his grades since she knew she was a great teacher, but she gave him another long, intense lecture on how to behave properly around girls. Despite the exhaustion from her lectures, Alan found the study groups helpful. Theo admired his quick learning, while Alan felt he still had a long way to go to match her knowledge of history and general subjects. One evening, Alan noticed Theo's mood darken when they saw some of their classmates. He realized that Theo was being isolated by her old friends because she was hanging out with a slum-born student. Feeling responsible, Alan approached Theo's friend Kate the next morning. He humbly asked if they could reconcile, offering to do whatever it took to fix their friendship. His sincerity caught Kate off guard. Later that day, Kate approached them in the library and tearfully apologized for her prejudiced behavior. Alan welcomed her into their study group, and soon his reputation in class began to shift. More students started treating him as an equal rather than an outcast. During lunch on the roof, Tia joined Alan and Theo. Although Theo was nervous around a high-ranking noble, Tia was friendly and insisted they all speak casually. Tia then mentioned the Magifest, a prestigious magic competition between 3 major academies held before summer break. While Tia was already selected as a combatant and Theo was joining the engineering team, Alan hadn't been invited yet. Tia suspected his unique circumstances were causing a delay, but assured him his talent wouldn't be ignored. On his way home, Alan accidentally bumped into a beautiful, mysterious woman with purple hair and deep, jewel-like eyes. She didn't seem angry. Instead, she looked at him with an unsettling, sweet intensity, remarking that he was filled with love. She called him by name before disappearing, leaving Alan confused about how she knew who he was. He didn't realize yet that a dark malice from the upper city was already closing in on him. After midterms, Alan's life at school improved. His perfect scores in magic engineering earned him the respect of his classmates who began coming to him for help with complex circuits. However, Theo warned him about a troubling rumor. Lloyd von Rewert had stopped attending classes and was facing pressure from his family to withdraw in disgrace. One evening, as Alan walked home through the twilight, he was suddenly trapped inside a high-level magical barrier. Lloyd appeared, looking haggard and unstable. Obsessed with reclaiming his pride, Lloyd demanded a final duel, claiming he had obtained a new power that would allow him to crush Alan. Alan noticed that Lloyd's origin looked distorted and dark, similar to a previous enemy he had faced. Lloyd unleashed a terrifying new form of lightning magic, surrounded by black sparks that charred the ground. Alan realized that Alina's water magic wouldn't be enough this time. He decided to reveal a new level of his power, origin replication of Sirius's ice magic. The area instantly froze, turning the battlefield into a world of frost. The battle was intense. Lloyd used his lightning to boost his physical speed to superhuman levels, but Alan remained calm. He used ultra-pure water to block the electricity as pure water doesn't conduct a charge. This forced Lloyd into a close-quarters fistfight. Despite Lloyd's increased power, Alan's training with Sirius had made him a top-tier fighter. He maintained a perfect balance of mana, regenerating his energy as fast as he spent it. In the final exchange, Lloyd tried to use his maximum output to break through, but Alan combined his water and ice powers to trap Lloyd's arms in a frozen lock. Alan delivered a decisive blow to Lloyd's chest, using the impact to simultaneously shatter the dark mana infection that had been warping Lloyd's heart. As the barrier crumbled and Lloyd lay defeated, the noble boy cried out in frustration, asking why a slum-born kid was so strong. Alan didn't gloat. He told Lloyd that while their social statuses were different, they were both just human. He encouraged Lloyd to stop looking at people as above or below and to focus on what his own heart truly wanted. For the first time, the weight of his family's expectations seemed to lift from Lloyd's shoulders. As Alan walked away, he knew the real threat. The person who gave Lloyd that dark power was still out there. As Lloyd lay on the ground, he finally understood why Alan's presence annoyed him so much. It wasn't because Alan was from the slums, but because Alan reminded him of his own past self, someone who genuinely loved magic before it became a tool for status and ego. Seeing Alan's clear eyes and resolve, Lloyd realized that despite their different backgrounds, they were just two mages and two human beings. Alan reached out a hand to help Lloyd up, but suddenly sensed a massive threat. He shoved Lloyd aside just as a blast scorched the ground where they had been standing. A woman with purple hair and jewel-like eyes approached, clapping her hands. It was Julia, the mysterious woman Alan had bumped into earlier. She praised their friendship but looked at Alan with a creepy, obsessed gaze. She revealed that she was the one who had given the dark power to Lloyd and his previous enemies, and she was shocked that Alan had managed to break her curse. Julia explained that while people like to think they can understand each other through kindness, the world is actually full of unfairness and hate. She then activated a terrifying high-level ability called Origin Descent, a peak magic skill only special-grade mages are supposed to use. Unlike a simple barrier, she rewrote reality itself, pulling Alan into a dark, wasteland dimension filled with countless crosses. On each cross rested a faint, sleeping figure of light, the trapped remnant of a soul. Julia called this her world of love, claiming she saved the souls of those she loved by keeping them here forever. Alan realized with horror that she had murdered all these people and was now using their stolen powers. Julia admitted she could use any of the hundreds of magic origins she had collected. She attacked Alan with a barrage of different elements, razor-sharp liquid blades, and massive waves of fire. The gap in power was massive. While Alan could replicate a few powers, Julia had nearly 100 at her disposal. She mocked Alan, threatening to kill everyone he cared about, Sirius, Alina, and his friends in the slums, just to see his love turn into hatred. The thought of losing his loved ones triggered something deep inside Alan. He felt a door in his mind open and whispered, "Origin Descent." For a split second, Alan tapped into his true, original power. He didn't just replicate. He moved with a speed that bypassed Julia's defenses and sliced off her arm. However, the strain was too much. A blinding headache forced him to his knees, and the third world he had glimpsed began to close. As Julia approached his weakened body to finish him off, the dark dimension suddenly shattered like glass. Belle, Sirius, and Alina burst through the barrier to rescue them. Belle recognized Julia from their academy days and was disgusted by how many people she had murdered in the name of love. Before they could capture her, a mysterious man in a suit appeared through a rift in space. His mana was so cold and powerful it felt like he could control the world itself. He told Julia it was time to go. They vanished into the rift, but not before Julia promised Alan that she would come back to claim him. Alan collapsed from exhaustion and woke up later in a hospital room. Sirius and Alina were there, feeling guilty for letting him get cornered. Sirius explained that Julia belongs to Replicus, a dangerous underground organization that performs human experiments to reach the peak of magic. Alan realized that being good and working hard wasn't enough to protect his friends from such pure evil. He had to master his own origin descent. Belle officially stepped up, promising to stop holding back and train Alan as a true master would. A few days later, Alan returned to the academy. He ran into Lloyd in the hallway. Instead of mocking him, Lloyd looked him in the eye and sincerely apologized for his arrogance. He admitted that Alan had saved his life and taught him what it truly means to be a maid. They agreed to drop the formalities and treat each other as equals, marking the start of a mutual respect. Soon after, the participants for the Magia Felsta, the big inter-academy competition, were announced. Professor Alice called Alan to her office. Given his top scores in engineering, Alan expected to be on the technical support team, but Alice had a different look in her eye as she welcomed him. Professor Alice revealed that Alan has been selected as a competitor for the upcoming inter-academy competition, the Magia Felsta. He won't be on the technical support team as he expected. Instead, he is a main combatant for a strategic team event called Decode Domination. This specific game involves capturing 5 nodes across a massive battlefield by breaking magical seals, which is why the Academy needs Alan's engineering expertise on the front line. Alan soon met his teammates. his rival-turned-friend Lloyd, and a new girl named Ai Sakuranami. Ai, a fierce girl with long black hair, acted cold and dismissive toward Alan, questioning if a nobody like him could keep up. Lloyd defended him, noting that Alan is actually stronger than himself, which only made Ai more curious and aggressive. She challenged Alan to a duel on the spot to see if he was worthy of the team. During the fight, Ai unleashed her origin, a beautiful blue blade. Alan noticed something strange. Unlike other mages, Ai seemed to have two distinct magical structures overlapping within her. As she attacked with incredible speed, Alan realized that water magic wouldn't be enough to stop her. He switched to a replication of ice magic, freezing the ground and pinning her down. When the duel ended, Alan admitted his true power is replication, which left both Ai and Lloyd speechless. Though frustrated by the loss, Ai begrudgingly accepted Alan as a teammate. On his way home, Alan encountered Ai's older sister Tsubaki, a world-class special-grade maid. Tsubaki, whose eyes are permanently closed as part of a ritualistic sin, bowed deeply to Alan and asked him to look after her sister. Later, Sirius explained the tragic history of the Sakuranami family. They are a strict clan of elite swordsmen who consider Ai a failure because she supposedly lost her original family magic. Alan realized that Ai's hostility comes from the pain of being abandoned by her own bloodline. At school, Tia also warned Alan about the heavy burdens noble families place on their children, though she encouraged him by saying he is the only one free from those curses. Determined to win and bring the team together, Alan met with Lloyd to study the competition's layout. Lloyd proposed a strategy where one person focuses on breaking the seals, while the others provide cover, and they began preparing for the high-stakes battles ahead. Lloyd explained that the game is won by either capturing 3 nodes or wiping out the enemy team. Since nodes are placed randomly and protected by complex magic seals, strategy is more important than raw power. Alan realized he was perfect for the role of capturing nodes due to his technical skills. While Lloyd wanted a balanced approach, Ai interrupted, arrogantly insisting they should just crush everyone head-on. Lloyd calmed her down, proposing a plan where Ai handles direct combat, Lloyd manages the overall battlefield strategy, and Alan balances both combat and node capturing. The team began practicing. Alan focused on a practice node, which was a complex rod-shaped device. While the average person takes 3 minutes to break the seal, Alan pushed himself through repeated practice until he dropped his time to under 2 minutes. Ai, who had been watching him while taking a break from her own training, admitted she was impressed by his skill. This led to their first real conversation. When Ai asked why a guy from the slums like him came to the upper city, Alan explained that he wanted to use his magic to change his home for the better. Ai was stunned by his resolve, admitting he was much stronger than her. Ai then shared her past. Her family, the Sakuranami clan, followed the Aoka Senjin style, where they turned magic into razor-sharp cherry blossom petals. As a child, Ai was a genius, even surpassing her older sister Tsubaki. However, one day her family magic simply stopped working. In its place, a strange light appeared, the power of spirits. Because she lost the traditional family magic, her father heartlessly disowned her, calling her a failure and a disgrace. She was kicked out of the main house and replaced by Tsubaki as the heir. Feeling bitter and abandoned, Ai even lashed out at Tsubaki, who tried to comfort her, before eventually leaving the family to live on her own. Despite everything, Ai never stopped training with her sword and eventually mastered her new spirit magic, Hecuri. Alan told her that surviving that kind of loneliness and still moving forward made her incredibly strong. Ai was visibly moved by his words, though she hid it with her usual tough attitude, demanding they win the festival. Alan noticed that her original power wasn't actually gone, it seemed to be sleeping, while her new spirit power protected it. Motivated by her story, Alan went back to training, determined to win for his team. Later, Tia met a new individual and politely introduced herself, asking for their name. Tia met Alan for practice, but she was curious why he wasn't training with his teammates. Alan explained that Lloyd and Ai were busy with combat practice and didn't care much for the technical side of capturing nodes. Lloyd had actually suggested that Tia would be a better teacher for him. Tia agreed to help, but she secretly wondered if she had anything left to teach a genius like Alan. Tia taught Alan some advanced mana control techniques that weren't tied to specific magical attributes. She explained that while a person's origin limits their potential, pure control is something anyone can master through hard work. To her absolute shock, Alan didn't just learn the techniques, he mastered them instantly. He managed to break a practice node in just over a minute, a feat usually reserved for top-tier elite mages. Seeing his insane growth, Tia felt a mix of fear and excitement. She realized Alan was becoming something beyond a normal genius. She had a brief, selfish thought. If she kept his growth slow by teaching him only standard textbook theories, he would stay close to her and remain the pure boy she knew. But her instincts as a mage took over. She told him to ignore the standard rules and follow his own gut feeling. As Alan thanked her with a bright, innocent smile, Tia felt a dark curiosity growing inside her. She wanted to see how far this monster could go in the cruel world of the upper city. Meanwhile, Lloyd and AI were finishing their own combat practice. AI asked Lloyd why he had changed so much from his old arrogant self. Lloyd admitted that after being crushed by Alan and witnessing a terrifying battle involving a high-level assassin, he realized he was just a pebble on the road compared to true monsters like Alan. He told AI that Alan was a shining star who looked into the very depths of magic. Despite his own limitations, Lloyd decided to support Alan and AI, believing that while he might never be a star, he could at least be a light to guide them. He also encouraged AI, telling her that her original family power wasn't gone and that she was a star too. Later, Alan and Lloyd spent hours debating team strategies. AI found the technical talk boring and left early, but not before cornering Alan at the school gate. She invited him to her apartment, claiming she had important information. At AI's place, after an awkward moment involving her messy room, they sat down for tea. AI warned Alan about their biggest rival in the upcoming festival, Luke Legnaris. Luke was from one of the great three noble families and was considered a perfect genius. However, AI warned that Luke was distorted. She explained that Luke believed in a cold, absolute logic. Effort never betrays you. When AI lost her family magic, Luke told her to her face that it happened only because she didn't work hard enough. He truly believed that if someone failed, it was entirely their own fault for being lazy, ignoring the reality of luck or circumstances. Alan, having grown up in the slums, found this mindset cruel. He knew that sometimes, no matter how hard you work, the world can still be unfair. Knowing Luke's personality, Alan realized their upcoming battle would be about more than just magic. AI mentioned that Luke's power is conceptual interference. Unlike most nobles who rely on family bloodlines, Luke's ability is unique to his own twisted mindset, which is why the upper-class society values him so highly. After their talk, AI looked uncharacteristically sad. As Alan prepared to leave, she informed him that the student council president, Elisha Custodia, wanted to see him the following afternoon. She described Elisha as a weirdo, but in a good way. On his way out, Alan felt a presence behind him. It was Alina. She had been waiting for him, and though she claimed to understand his spontaneous social life as a student, her eyes weren't smiling at all. The next day, Alan nervously entered the student council room. He met Elisha, a stunning woman with long silver hair that shimmered like moonlight. To his relief, she didn't look down on him for being from the slums. Instead, she treated him with genuine respect. When she asked what he thought was the most important quality for a mage, Alan answered courage. Elisha liked the answer but then gave her own unexpected philosophy. The most important thing for a mage is muscle. Elisha explained that she was born with a weak body. Despite her high magical talent, she was treated as a mere political pawn for marriage because she lacked the physical strength to use her power. Everything changed when she met her mentor, a top-tier elite mage who also came from the slums. This mentor told her she simply needed more muscle. To prove her point, Elisha shrugged off her uniform jacket, revealing a specialized training outfit underneath. Her build was lean and powerfully athletic, the result of intense daily discipline. She told Alan she was rooting for him because, like her mentor, Alan proved that bloodline isn't everything. However, things got awkward when Elisha grew a little too enthusiastic about inspecting his training form, prompting him to make a quick exit. With the festival less than a week away, Alan began special training with his master Belle. While Alina watched and occasionally got overwhelmed by how precious Alan looked, Belle arrived by literally crashing into the yard like a falling star. Belle decided to teach Alan the true basics of magical combat, mana control. Belle demonstrated that mana control is split into inside flow, reinforcing the body, and outside flow, releasing mana. To show the importance of body reinforcement, Belle let Alina punch her at full strength. Despite the massive impact, Belle stood unfazed, though she later admitted Alina's punch actually hurt quite a bit. Belle then gave Alan a simple wooden stick and told him to flow his mana into it and maintain it for 1 hour without breaking the wood. When Alan tried, he immediately snapped the stick by injecting too much mana. Belle explained that while Alan has massive raw power, he lacks delicate control. She mentioned that masters like Tsubaki, AI's sister, are so skilled that their mana makes their swords feel like an extension of their own body. After giving the assignment, Belle left. Alina questioned if the task was too hard, but Belle revealed that Alan doesn't learn like normal mages. Since Alan's power is replication, he doesn't follow standard rules. He learns by experiencing the extremes of magic. Belle noted that Alan is already on the path toward Advent State, a legendary level of magical power. Back at the school training grounds, Alan practiced his node capturing skills while his teammates worked out. Thanks to Belle's training with the wooden stick, Alan's understanding of his own mana flow reached a new level, making his technical skills sharper than ever. He was no longer just a talented kid from the slums, he was becoming a monster of efficiency. Alan finalized his training by refining his mana flow. Since he lacks a natural mana circuit, he must constantly replicate one, a process that requires extreme effort to balance the immense power of his origin. With the festival starting the next day, Alan, Lloyd and AI gathered for a final strategy meeting. Lloyd explained that their winning card is Alan's incredible speed at capturing nodes, which is likely the fastest in the competition. While Lloyd handles the tactical overview and AI focuses on raw offense, Alan will balance both combat and technical support. The conversation turned to their biggest threat, Luke Legnaris. Lloyd admitted that neither he nor AI could beat Luke in a direct fight, leaving that heavy responsibility to Alan. AI, hiding her nerves, told Alan she was leaving Luke to him so they could each prove their worth, whether to overcome family trauma or to secure a future. Despite their different backgrounds, the three felt a strong bond as a team. On the day of the festival, Alan arrived at the massive circular arena, overwhelmed by its size and the thousands of spectators. Near the entrance, he witnessed a confrontation between a student and a tall, red-haired boy with dark, empty eyes. This was Luke Legnaris. Luke was about to crush the other student's arm with compressed mana when Alan intervened, pretending to trip and fall between them to break up the fight. Luke acted polite and even praised Alan for his hard work as a commoner, but the atmosphere shifted instantly when two of Luke's female teammates arrived late. Without a second thought, Luke knocked both girls back with a sharp burst of mana, leaving them shaken. Disturbingly, the girls thanked him for the punishment. Luke calmly explained to a shocked Alan that this violence was his version of justice, believing that pain is necessary to correct a lack of effort. Meanwhile, back at the estate, Alina was desperate to follow Alan, but Sirius reminded her that Alan needs to grow on his own. To cope, Alina revealed a custom cheering outfit she had made, covered in embroidery supporting Alan, complete with a handmade flag of his face. Sirius also noted that while the festival is a celebration, he is on high alert for the Replicas organization. He warned that the enemy has descendants, mages capable of rewriting reality itself through a peak state called Origin Descent. Back at the arena, Alan met AI and noticed her sister Tsubaki watching from the shadows. Though AI walked away, Alan approached Tsubaki and convinced her to stay and watch. He sensed that despite their fallout, both sisters still cared for each other. Belle suddenly appeared and dragged Tsubaki along to watch the match together, giving Alan an encouraging wink. Inside the waiting room, Alan faced cold stares and insults from other noble students who looked down on him for being from the slums. Lloyd and AI stood by him, reminding him to let his results do the talking. During the opening ceremony, Student Council President Elisha gave a powerful speech about pride and physical discipline, officially starting the festival. As the team headed to their first match, Alan gripped his fist tight, ready to face the elite world and prove his value. The Magic Festival officially kicks off with its first event, Ether Rally, a magic-infused version of tennis. While Alan's team event, Decode Domination, won't happen until the final day in a distant forest, Alan stays in the main arena to watch. He learns that the tournament is split into a freshman division and a senior division, with teams chosen by lottery. Feeling anxious about the upcoming matches and the pressure from rivals like Luke Legnaris, Alan heads to the waiting room to cheer for his friends Tia and Fio. Fio is busy maintaining the specialized rackets used in the game, while Tia reveals she is competing in two different events due to her high skill level. Despite the cold stares and insults from other nobles who mock him for being a commoner, Alan ignores the noise. He loudly cheers for his friends from the stands, much to the amusement of Lloyd and AI. Meanwhile, Belle and Tsubaki watch the opening ceremony from a private spot. Belle sets up a soundproof barrier to discuss a serious matter. Julia, a former classmate and current member of the criminal group Replicas, has reached the Advent state. Julia's power allows her to rewrite reality and use hundreds of stolen magical abilities. Belle warns that while Tsubaki is a powerful warrior, fighting someone like Julia is incredibly dangerous. Belle also hints at her own terrifying power, which could potentially swallow the entire world, but she prefers a quiet life of drinking and smoking. Belle then reveals a shocking truth to Tsubaki. Alan's talent is far beyond their own. She describes him as a true genius among geniuses who sees deeper into the essence of magic than anyone in history. She predicts that Alan is a singularity who will split magical history into two eras before him and after him, but warns that such power always comes with a heavy price for everyone involved. Before Tsubaki leaves, Belle teases her about being a sister con and tells her to stop stalking AI through Alan and just talk to her sister directly. Back at the arena, the Ether Rally begins. Alan is unsettled by the heavy, judgmental atmosphere of the crowd. Lloyd and AI explain that for nobles, this festival isn't just a game, it's a talent exhibition, where parents and high-ranking officials judge their children's worth. Those who fail are often disowned or discarded. Alan realizes that while his life in the slums was physically hard, he had a freedom these noble kids never knew. Tia takes the court and dominates her matches with flawless mana control. While the crowd praises her as the perfect heir to the Seraphiles family, Alan sees the immense physical and mental exhaustion she is hiding. After she makes it to the finals, Alan slips away to the waiting room. He finds Fio outside, who is worried because Tia has locked herself into rest and refuses to see anyone. Knowing Tia is pushing herself too hard to prove her family's worth, Alan convinces Fio to let him check on her. He knocks on the door, and after a long silence, a tired Tia finally lets him in. Alan stepped into the room and found Tia slumped in a chair, completely exhausted. Her mana flow was a mess, and she looked physically drained from her matches. Feeling that a simple good luck wasn't enough, Alan gave her a heartfelt thumbs up. He told her that he had seen how hard she worked and that her skill wasn't just talent, it was the result of all the time she had put in. He promised to support her no matter the outcome. Moved by his words, Tia hugged him tightly, finding the strength to keep going. She declared she wouldn't lose to this noble society because she wasn't alone anymore. The freshman division finals of the Ether Rally began, and Alan watched from the stands. Despite her fatigue, Tia played brilliantly. In a tense final moment, instead of a powerful smash that everyone expected, she used her perfect mana control to pull off a delicate drop shot. The ball barely bounced, leaving her opponent with no chance to react. Tia won the tournament, and as the crowd cheered, she shared a victory pose with Alan in the stands. The next day, the senior division matches took place, followed by the start of the Fatal Bullet event, a shooting competition using magic-infused muskets. While heading to the arena, Alan ran into Professor Alice. She explained that the technical team was short-staffed and asked Alan to help out by specifically looking after Tia's equipment. Alan agreed and met up with Fio in the waiting room. Fio was struggling with the magical software of the muskets, so Alan took over the task. With less than an hour before the match, Alan didn't just do a basic check. He touched Tia to sense her unique mana structure and began a high-speed optimization of her musket. He rewrote the magical formulas to eliminate delays, maximize efficiency, and create a direct link between her internal mana and the trigger. By the time he was done, the weapon was perfectly synchronized with Tia's body. Tia's performance in the Fatal Bullet qualifiers was legendary. She achieved a perfect score, a feat rarely seen in the festival's history. Even Lloyd and AI were stunned by her precision. Alan casually explained to them that he had adjusted the gear to automatically learn and adapt to Tia's mana as the match progressed. Tia went on to dominate the finals, winning her second championship of the festival. As evening approached on the day before his own event, Decode Domination, Alan felt the weight of the cold, judgmental stares from the nobles. His mentor, Belle, appeared and noticed that Alan had tampered with Tia's gear. Belle warned him that while the world would judge his value, he had to push through his fear. She told him that at the peak of magic, fear turns into a sense of total power where the mage becomes one with the world. On his way home, a girl named Melt Wilson from his class approached. She had a soft, calm vibe, but as they spoke, the atmosphere felt strange. She mentioned that Alan was unique because he could perceive something called the Original, a realm even top-tier mages and the Replicas organization couldn't reach. She hinted that he was closer to the true abyss of magic than anyone else. Suddenly, the wind blew and she vanished. Alan's memory of the conversation became fuzzy, leaving him wondering why he was standing there. The next morning, Alan woke up early, feeling sharp. After a light breakfast prepared by Alina, he headed out. The day of his competition had finally arrived, and he was ready to step into the depths of magical combat. As the competition begins, Alina hugs Alan tightly, acknowledging the immense effort he's put in since leaving the slums. With her encouragement, Alan's nerves vanish, and he heads to the waiting room with a steady heart. He meets his teammates, Lloyd and AI, and learns they aren't seeded for the tournament, meaning they have to fight their way up from the very first round. Outside, they run into Luke Legnaris and his two silent subordinates. Luke notes that if they both keep winning, they'll meet in the finals. Before they part, Luke pointedly asks Lloyd and AI if they've worked hard enough to stand by someone like Alan. The comment stings, but it only hardens their resolve. They move to the Decode Domination field, a massive artificial forest designed specifically for magical combat. The rules are simple. Win by capturing 3 out of 5 nodes or by eliminating the opposing team. To keep things safe, every student is protected by a magical barrier that teleports them out once it breaks from too much damage. Their first opponents are a group of arrogant nobles who mock them for having a slum dweller on the team. Lloyd shuts them down, stating they aren't just there to play, they're there to win the whole thing. The match begins and the teams are randomly warped into the forest. In the spectator stands, Alina is causing a scene. She's wearing a bright pink outfit covered in Alan's name and waving a giant fan with his face on it. Her old school friends, Belle and Tsubaki, are embarrassed to be seen with her, but stay to watch the match. Belle reveals that she actually invented this game years ago to make the festival more exciting than just basic duel. Back in the forest, Alan's team executes a lightning-fast annihilation strategy. Instead of focusing on the nodes, they rush the enemy team immediately. AI takes down the first opponent with a single blinding sword strike. Lloyd follows up, using his lightning magic to close the distance and knock out the second guard. Alan faces the final opponent, activating his water magic to neutralize the enemy's attacks before finishing him with a powerful punch. The match ends in seconds, leaving the crowd and the commentators in shock at their efficiency. While some nobles dismiss the win as a fluke, Belle and Tsubaki see the truth. The team is perfectly synchronized. Between matches, Alan retreats to a private room to sharpen his mana control. He practices a new, delicate exercise, using his mana to weave a lifelike butterfly out of thin thread. As he works, he enters a deep state of focus where the world feels incredibly vivid. Suddenly, Alan's consciousness slips into a white, void-like space. He meets his origin, the version of himself that represents his power. The figure warns him that he is about to open a door to the deep abyss of magic, and that once he steps through, he can never go back to being the person he was. Alan doesn't hesitate. He chooses to move forward. He snaps back to reality just as the semifinals begin. This time, the strategy changes. While Lloyd and AI rush off to distract the enemy team, Alan is left alone to handle the nodes. The commentators are confused when they see Alan approach the first node and then immediately walk away. They assume he's given up or is running to help his friends. However, Professor Alice, acting as a commentator, tells them to check the timer. The stadium falls silent as the data updates. Alan cleared the first complex magical seal in just 53 seconds, a speed that should be impossible for any student. While the enemy is still looking for him, Alan is already racing toward the next target, moving with a level of skill that is about to change the world of magic forever. Alan's record-breaking performance of clearing the first node in 53 seconds stunned the arena. While the nobles suspected a machine malfunction or cheating, the top-tier mages, including Belle and Tsubaki, realized they were witnessing a historic shift in magic. Alina felt a mix of pride and worry, knowing that Alan's immense talent would permanently change his life and pull him away from the peaceful world they knew. Ignoring the shock, Alan continued his streak, clearing the second node in 42 seconds and the final one in a mere 29 seconds. The stadium fell into a heavy silence as the total blowout ended. While Alan celebrated innocently with AI and Lloyd, his teammates looked grim, sensing the weight of this victory. Meanwhile, Luke watched with a twisted joy, his obsession with Alan's power reaching a boiling point. When Luke's subordinates Lily and Lulu showed fear at Alan's potential, Luke punished them with a physical mana blast, mocking their lack of effort. He firmly believed his own hard work made him invincible. The next day, before the final match, Alan ran into Tsubaki, who was nervously trying to support AI. Alan encouraged the reunion, helping the two sisters face each other. Shortly after, Luke approached Alan's team. He dismissively called AI, Lloyd, and his own teammates useless extras, claiming the final was actually a personal duel between him and Alan. When Luke prepared to strike his subordinates again for being slow, Alan stepped in and grabbed Luke's hand. Alan challenged Luke to a bet. If Alan won the match, Luke had to apologize to the sisters and stop the abuse. If Alan lost, he would leave the upper levels forever and never return. Luke, thrilled by the high stakes, accepted. As the match began, Luke instantly blanketed the field in gold mana, using a high-level technique to begin decoding nodes remotely, something even Alan couldn't do. Realizing they were being baited into a trap, Lloyd changed their plan on the fly. He ordered AI to take out Lily and Lulu while he went to stall Luke. Lloyd reached the center of the field and confronted Luke. Luke admitted he had forced this split to ensure a final showdown with Alan. Despite knowing he stood no chance against Luke's overwhelming power, Lloyd prepared to fight, determined to shave off whatever he could from Luke's barrier to give Alan a fighting chance. He accepted his role as a stepping stone, putting his full trust in Alan to finish the job. Lloyd charged at Luke, activating his lightning magic to boost his physical speed. Despite the gap in their power, Lloyd refused to back down, inspired by Alan's constant growth. Luke didn't even bother to activate his own special power, believing his basic mana control was enough to win. He stayed rooted to the spot, releasing a wave of golden energy that sent Lloyd flying. Luke mocked Lloyd's effort, promising to stay in one place during the fight. Lloyd kept getting back up, even as his protective barrier dropped below 10%. He was covered in blood and exhausted, but he refused to give up. He knew he couldn't win, but he had a plan, In one final, desperate dash, Lloyd lunged forward. Luke released another massive shockwave to finish him off, shattering Lloyd's barrier and disqualifying him. However, as Lloyd faded from the field, he triggered a hidden trap. He had been secretly placing small electrical charges on the nearby trees. The stored energy suddenly released, forcing Luke to jump out of his unmoving position to avoid the blast. Lloyd smiled as he disappeared, having successfully landed a psychological blow. AI arrived at the scene shortly after. She had already dealt with Luke's teammates Lily and Lulu. Although the sisters had managed to clear 2 nodes before she took them down, AI had eliminated them both. She saw that Lloyd was gone and prepared to face Luke alone. Luke, visibly annoyed that Lloyd had actually made him move, turned his focus to her. AI activated her Azure Spirit power. She felt a new sense of purpose. She wasn't fighting for revenge or her family anymore, but for her new friends. Despite her best efforts, Luke's golden mana defenses were impenetrable. He swatted her away like an insect, claiming her hard work was meaningless against his justice. In the stands, Tsubaki watched with a heavy heart. She knew AI was outmatched, but she also knew her sister's true potential hadn't fully awakened yet. Tsubaki broke her own restrictive seal, opening her red eyes to get a clear view of the match. She let out a loud cheer for her sister, a cry that shouldn't have reached the arena but somehow did. Hearing her sister's voice in her mind, AI felt a sudden shift. Her blue mana turned a deep crimson, and she subconsciously used a legendary family technique she thought she had lost. She moved with such incredible speed that she bypassed Luke's reaction time, leaving a shallow cut on his cheek. It was the first time Luke had ever been injured in a fight. AI collapsed, her mana completely spent. Luke was in a state of shock and rage, touching the blood on his face. Just as he was about to unleash a brutal attack on the defenseless AI, a wall of water rose up to protect her. Alan had arrived. Alan looked worried and angry as he checked on AI. Her barrier was gone, and she was about to be teleported out. Before she disappeared, she told Luke that she couldn't wait to see what happened when his fate by effort logic was finally proven wrong. She left the rest to Alan. Now alone in the arena, Alan stood face to face with Luke. The air was thick with tension as the 2 strongest students prepared for their final showdown. Alan wasn't just fighting for the win anymore. He was fighting for the friends Luke had looked down on. Alan stood before Luke, who was still grinning like a madman. Luke mocked Lloyd and AI's efforts, calling them useless because they couldn't even force him to use his true power. He ranted about his justice logic, claiming that a person's destiny is decided entirely by how much they work, and since he worked harder than anyone, he was always right. Alan calmly shut him down, telling Luke that his justice was just a fancy excuse to be a violent bully. Infuriated, Luke finally decided to show his true strength. He activated his origin release, the Judgment. This power was a massive cheat. It set Luke's own beliefs as the law of the world. Because Luke viewed himself as good, the world gave him massive buffs in speed and power. Because he viewed Alan's tactics as evil or cowardly, Alan was hit with heavy debuffs that made his body feel like lead and messed with his magic control. Luke explained that every time Alan tried a trick or a surprise attack, the debuffs would stack up, making him even weaker. To most people, this would be an instant loss. But Alan didn't panic. He realized that while Luke was a monster, he was still human, unlike the terrifying, godlike being Alan had faced in his past. Alan stuck to using Alina's water magic, refusing to switch to other styles he hadn't mastered yet. He started using water clones and thick fog to hide. Luke laughed, thinking Alan was just digging his own grave by triggering more cowardly debuffs. However, Alan was actually observing. He figured out that Luke's power required him to actually see his target to apply the judgment. Up in the stands, even the experts were shocked. Alina realized that Alan wasn't just copying her magic anymore, he was evolving it into something she couldn't even do. Alan finally made his move. He jumped into the air and threw a water spear, but at the last second he reshaped the water into a massive floating mirror, using a high-level technique called phase shift. Water mirror, Alan did the impossible. He reflected Luke's own power back at him. All the massive debuffs Alan had been collecting by acting sneaky suddenly slammed into Luke, while Alan was instantly cured. Luke was paralyzed by his own power. Before he could react, Alan charged through the mist and landed a devastating punch right to Luke's face. The blow was so strong it shattered Luke's defenses, dropping his barrier to 50% in one hit. For the first time in his life, the perfect noble felt true terror. He couldn't understand how a commoner could possess such overwhelming talent. Both fighters were reaching their limits. The mental strain of reflecting such a high-level power was tearing at Alan's mind, but he pushed through the pain. He headed toward the final node, appearing to focus on winning the game. Desperate and losing his mind, Luke lunged at Alan for one last strike, refusing to accept defeat. But Alan was one step ahead. He had used the node as bait, knowing Luke's pride wouldn't let him just watch. As Luke closed in, Alan dropped the act and prepared a final water spear. He wasn't looking down on Luke or fearing him. He treated him as a true equal for the first time. Luke realized too late that Alan had outplayed him not just in power but in strategy. As the water spear readied for the finish, a small smile crossed Luke's face, realizing he had finally met a true monster. Alan's water spear hit Luke head-on, completely shattering his barrier and securing a victory for Celestia Magic Academy. The crowd was in shock as the commentator announced that a commoner from the lower levels had defeated the elite Luke Legnaris. Back in the waiting area, Alan was exhausted, realizing how close the fight actually was. Lloyd and AI rushed over to hug him, celebrating their massive win. While they praised his strength, Alan remained humble, telling them it was a team effort and he couldn't have won without the training they did together. Watching them, Luke accepted his defeat. Alan approached Luke to settle their bet. Luke called over his subordinates Lily and Lulu and did something unexpected. He bowed deeply. He admitted his justice was wrong and that effort alone doesn't decide a person's fate. He freed the sisters from his service and offered them his fortune as an apology. In response, Lily slapped him, not out of hate but to snap him out of his guilt. The sisters told him they had always respected his hard work and stayed by his side because they chose to, not just because they were forced. Luke was moved to tears, promising to start over and treat them as equal. After the tournament ended with the senior student Elisha leading the school to an overall victory, the academy celebrated. Even the upper-class students who used to look down on Alan began to show him respect. On the last day of school before summer break, Alan met his master who praised his performance but gave him a serious warning. She mentioned the witches, women who use ancient, powerful magic called origin that predates modern magic systems. Most were wiped out in historical hunts, but the survivors remained dangerous. Later, while eating lunch on the roof, Alan ran into his classmate Melt Wilson. Suddenly, a repressed memory surfaced. He realized he hadn't heard about witches from his master first, he had heard it from Melt. When he asked her if she was a witch, Melt's calm demeanor vanished. Realizing her secret was out, Melt activated her true power, Alpha Melty, turning the entire rooftop into a void of pure white. She explained that witches are hunted because their power can destroy the world. To protect her life, she told Alan she had to kill him. Alan quickly tried to talk her down, asking why they couldn't just find a middle ground. He promised to keep her secret, but Melt pointed out that a verbal promise wasn't enough to gamble her life on. To prove his sincerity, Alan suggested a magical contract, a curse that would kill him instantly if he ever spoke about her being a witch. Melt was stunned that anyone would willingly accept a death curse, but seeing his resolve, she placed her finger on his forehead and carved the spell into his soul. Once the curse was set, the white void vanished, and they returned to the normal rooftop. Instead of being scared, Alan immediately started geeking out about her magic. He analyzed how her origin power didn't just follow the laws of the world like normal magic, but actually rewrote the rules of reality itself. Melt was overwhelmed by his reaction. Most people would be terrified of a world-ending power, but Alan was just genuinely excited to learn more about it. Since he couldn't talk to anyone else about this without triggering the curse, Alan told Melt they should just keep talking to each other. Melt looked down, shy and confused by his kindness, as Alan looked forward to spending more time with her after the break. The last day of school before summer break arrived. While Alan planned to attend the optional special classes during the first half of the vacation, he was thrilled to find out that Melt would also be attending. They walked back to class together, and Alan reflected on how much his life was about to change. Between the world of nobles, the deep secrets of magic, and the existence of witches, this summer promised to be intense. Back at the mansion, Alina and Sirius celebrated Alan's tournament victory with a massive feast. However, the mood turned serious when Sirius revealed a new problem. Several noble families were now requesting marriage proposals for Alan. They wanted to bring his incredible talent into their bloodline. Alina was furious at the idea of anyone taking Alan, but Sirius calmed them down by confirming he had already rejected every offer. He refused to let Alan be used as a political tool. Alone in his room, Alan thought about the heavy expectations of the upper levels. Despite the comfort of his new life, he felt the pressure of the world trying to value him only for his power. He looked at the bracelet Lyra had given him, missing his friends in the lower levels but vowing to keep moving forward to change their world. The next morning, Alina noticed Alan looking a bit down. He admitted he had dreamed about his childhood friend, Lyra, and felt like he was being weak. Alina comforted him, telling him that remembering his past wasn't a weakness but a sign of his kindness. However, her tone shifted instantly when she started demanding details about Lyra to judge if she was worthy of him. Sensing danger, Alan quickly made his escape and headed to school. On his way, Alan met Melt. They spoke quietly about their shared fate regarding the witch's curse, but their private moment was interrupted by Tia. She appeared with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, clearly jealous of Alan's new friendship. After Melt politely excused herself, Tia vented her frustration, hinting that Alan was the cause of her stress, though he wouldn't understand why for another 10 years. As they walked into the building, Alan noticed the students weren't mocking him anymore. Instead, they were gossiping about his scandalous relationship with a high-ranking noble like Tia. During lunch, Alan sat in the courtyard with Lloyd. Lloyd warned him that his victory over Luke had made him a legend among the students, and even Lloyd's own father had considered offering a marriage proposal. Lloyd also mentioned that Alan's master, the Starry Sage, had faced similar pressure from nobles in her youth, but had scared them off with her rebellious attitude. Before leaving, Lloyd hinted that Alan's denseness regarding the girls around him would eventually become a major problem. Soon after, Melt joined Alan for lunch. She warned him that being seen with her might cause bad rumors, especially since she was a dangerous presence in his life. Alan didn't care about the rumors or the curse. He genuinely wanted to be her friend and learn more about her unique magic. Melt was touched by his sincerity, realizing that Alan was perhaps the only person in the world who truly loved the essence of magic without fear. They agreed to keep their meetings private, almost like a secret club as they prepared for the rest of the summer. Meanwhile, deep in the lower levels of the city, Lyra was working hard. Under the guidance of a man named Roke, she was training her own magic. Her origin power was revealed to be healing, a rare and powerful ability that could even fix inanimate objects. While Alan was climbing the heights of the magic world, Lyra was growing stronger in the shadows, preparing for the day they would meet again. Deep in the lower levels, Lyra's training with Roke has become a grueling daily routine. She struggles to mold her mana and channel it into her origin, a process Roke insists she must master until it becomes as natural as breathing. Despite her hard work, Lyra feels discouraged, convinced she lacks the natural-born genius that Alan possesses. Roke, a former teacher from the upper levels who has seen countless prodigies, admits that even among the elite noble families, he has never seen anyone with a talent as unique and captivating as Alan. He warns that such a brilliant light can sometimes burn those around it or even the user themselves. However, Lyra remains confident. She believes that while Alan's power is world-changing, his true strength lies in his pure kindness, which will always draw good people to his side. Their training is suddenly interrupted when a woman literally falls from the sky, landing with a massive explosion of dust. It is Belle, the legendary mage and Alan's master. Roke is instantly on edge, recognizing her immense power. Belle explains she is just passing through on business and wanted to check on them. She reveals to Lyra that Alan is doing well and has adapted to the upper levels, but there is bad news as well. Alan's talent has officially awakened. She describes him as a singularity whose power surpasses even her own, warning that he is becoming a focal point that will inevitably drag him into the deep, dark secrets of the magic world. Before vanishing into thin air, Belle promises to tell Alan they are doing well. Lyra, feeling a renewed sense of purpose, vows to become a mage strong enough to stand by Alan's side rather than just watching from behind. Back at the academy, the intensity of summer classes is weighing on Alan. While he excels in magic engineering, he struggles with general subjects like history and linguistics. Fearing he might fail and be sent back to the lower level, he heads to the massive cathedral-like school library to study alone. He reflects on how much has changed in a few months from being a shunned commoner to defeating Luke and discovering the existence of witches. While lost in his books, Alan is startled by Melt, who has been trying to get his attention. She notices his intense focus and finds it strange that a top-tier talent like him is worried about basic grades. Alan explains that he needs to prove himself through results to stay in the upper levels and reach the magic abyss. As they walk home together in the evening, Alan asks Melt about her family. The atmosphere turns cold as Melt reveals, with a sad and hollow smile, that she has no family and lives entirely alone. Before Alan can process this, Alina arrives to pick him up and Melt quickly disappears into the shadows of the city. Alan is left troubled by Melt's confession. Having grown up with Lyra and his mentors, he can't imagine a life with no one to lean on. He suspects her loneliness is tied to her identity as a witch and the history of witch hunts. Bound by a death curse that prevents him from asking others for help, Alan resolves to research the history of witches on his own to understand the burden Melt is carrying. Meanwhile, a glimpse into Melt's perspective reveals her simple desire for a peaceful life. She had entered the academy as a scholarship student, hoping to stay hidden in the shadow of flashy nobles like Tia. However, Alan's meteoric rise and his ability to sense the origin state during the tournament terrified her. She realized early on that Alan's pure, unyielding talent for magic made him the one person most likely to expose her secret. She had initially approached him out of a desperate need to protect herself and her mother's memory, but she is beginning to realize that Alan is unlike any person she has ever met in the upper level. Melt watched Alan from afar, her heart racing with fear. She had already tried to protect herself by sealing Alan's memories of the tournament, hoping to stunt his growth so he wouldn't attract the wrong attention. She believed that if he didn't stand out, he wouldn't discover the truth about her. But her plan failed. Alan had shattered every record and defeated the elite Luke Legnaris, proving his talent was a singularity that couldn't be suppressed. Terrified that his obsession with the essence of magic would eventually expose her as a witch, Melt had even tried to kill him, only to be stopped by his pure kindness. Now, despite the death curse she placed on him to keep her secret, they had formed a strange, secret friendship. One afternoon, Alan ran into Melt in the school courtyard. When he invited her to lunch, she hesitated, noticing the student council president, Elisha, watching them with a dark, jealous gaze from a third-story window. Melt tried to warn Alan that being seen with her was dangerous, not just because of the rumors, but because of the heavy atmosphere coming from his other female friends. Alan, typically dense, ignored the warning and insisted they meet in secret, calling it a secret rendezvous, which only made Melt feel more conflicted about her destiny to live in solitude. Later, Alan headed to the library to research the history of witches. He found ancient records describing them as calamities who possessed power far beyond modern magic. These witches had once plunged the world into a period of chaos called the Witch War, leading to a brutal witch hunt that supposedly wiped them out. Alan noticed a major gap in the history. The books never explained why the witches attacked or how normal mages managed to defeat beings with such overwhelming power. He sensed a hidden truth was being covered up. His research was interrupted by AI, who mocked his interest in fairy tale. To the modern world, witches were just stories used to scare children. After AI left, Alan began to head home, still troubled by the history of the cursed witches and Melt's lonely life. On his way, Alan bumped into his master, Belle. She was carrying a large package of high-quality meat, planning to force Alina to cook it for her. As they walked together, Belle suddenly stopped and flicked her cigarette away. The atmosphere shifted instantly as she activated her Starry Sea domain, a high-level barrier that completely cut them off from the outside world. Belle's playful attitude vanished, replaced by a cold, sharp killing intent that Alan had never felt before. She looked deep into his eyes, her gaze piercing through his very soul. With the stars swirling around them in a silent, terrifying display of power, Belle asked a single, chilling question. "Alan, you've been cursed by a witch, haven't you?" Meanwhile, the reality of Melt's life was far darker than Alan imagined. She lived in a decaying, one-room apartment on the outskirts of the city. When she returned home that evening, she didn't find peace. A man named Roland, a handsome but cruel high-ranking member of a mysterious organization, was waiting for her. Without a word, Roland released a wave of mana that slammed Melt against the door, knocking the air out of her lungs. As she lay gasping on the floor, Roland stood over her, pinning her down with sheer pressure alone. He revealed that he was using Melt as a mana battery, forcefully draining her unique witch energy to increase his own power and rank within his group. Because of a binding contract Melt had been forced to sign, she couldn't resist. He drained her until she could barely stay conscious, leaving her with the parting insult of filthy witch. Alone and sobbing on the floor, Melt remembered her mother's dying words, that someone would eventually appear to save her. But as she looked at her cracked ceiling, she wondered if a savior could ever truly exist for a cursed creature like her. The Master's intense magical field, the Star Sea domain, transformed the surroundings into a literal galaxy. She wasn't playing around. She was acting as a high-ranking master mage, demanding to know when and where a witch had cursed Alan. Alan refused to answer, not just to save his own life from the curse's trigger, but to protect Melt. He realized the master was trying to figure out the curse's logic just from his silence. The master offered to break the curse using a specialized ritual, but Alan surprisingly asked her not to. To Alan, this wasn't a curse, it was a promise with Melt. He believed she was a kind person who could have killed him easily but chose not to. Seeing Alan's resolve, the master backed down and dissolved the field. She made Alan promise to rely on her if things got too heavy and handed him a package of meat for dinner before leaving. Alan watched her go, wondering if he was making the right choice by following his heart. Later, the master went to the Academy's research wing to meet Alice, another top-tier master maid. Alice, dressed in a black and white gothic dress, wasn't surprised to hear Alan had encountered a witch. She figured his flashy performance at the festival was bound to attract attention. However, both mages weren't really worried about witches. They knew witches had a fatal flaw that kept them from being a true threat unless provoked. Their real concern was Alan himself. They discussed how Alan's talent was off the charts even for a genius. The master revealed a shocking secret. Alan used to have 0 mana, but now he has an infinite supply. She realized Alan isn't just copying magic, he is reproducing mana itself. His brain has a special processing zone that never sleeps, meaning he is practicing and using magic 24/7, even while unconscious. This constant activity is why he grows so much faster than anyone else. Alice was stunned, realizing Alan was barely human in terms of capability. The master warned that a mysterious organization and a girl named Julia who has a similar copying ability might target Alan soon. She asked Alice to keep an eye on him. Before leaving, the master teased Alice about her past, calling her by her full noble name, Alice von Seraphiles, which she claimed to have abandoned after cutting ties with her family. As summer break began, Alan's friends were busy with noble duties and greetings. Alan expected to spend his break studying at the mansion, but Alina had other plans. She informed him that Sirius had been invited to a massive new magical resort in the South District, featuring artificial beaches and luxury hotels. Alan felt hesitant about enjoying such luxury, but Alina encouraged him. She told him that to change the world for the people in the lower slums, he needed to experience everything the upper world had to offer and use every resource to grow stronger. Alan realized how lucky he was to have people supporting him as he prepared for this new environment. Alan and Alina headed to the Elysian Magical Resort for summer break. Since Alan had never traveled far within the upper city, they took the Magitram, a high-speed magical train. Alan was immediately fascinated by the tech, correctly guessing that the train and the tracks worked together to create a frictionless, silent ride. Alina was impressed by how quickly he understood such complex engineering. Alan realized that his goal was to master this kind of technology and eventually bring it back to help the people in the lower slums. When they arrived at the resort, the view of the artificial ocean was breathtaking. At the hotel check-in, Alan was surprised to see Melt working as a staff member for the summer. They shared a friendly moment before Alina stepped in to finish the paperwork. While waiting, Alan ran into Luke Legnaris, his rival from the tournament. Luke made a flashy entrance, complete with magical spotlights provided by his twin attendants, Lily and Lulu. Luke had changed since their fight. He was humbler and genuinely thanked Alan for showing him how much room he had to grow. However, his excitement quickly turned into an obsession as he tried to force Alan into an immediate rematch. Lily and Lulu had to physically drag Luke away so Alan could leave. Alan and Alina moved into their luxury suite on the 10th floor. The room was massive, featuring a kitchen where Alina promised to cook for him and a balcony with a perfect view of the sea. Looking at the ocean, Alan felt a bit sad that his friends in the slums couldn't see something so beautiful, making him even more determined to change the world. Meanwhile, in a hidden location within the upper city, the organization known as Replicus was active. Julia, a girl with long purple hair, was casually playing darts when a man named Orf arrived. Orf is a high-ranking official in the magic ministry who leads Replicus on the side. Despite being a major criminal leader, he takes his government job seriously, treating his roles in both the ministry and the shadow organization as equally important duties. Inside the Replicus organization, Julia playfully hits a bullseye on a dartboard while chatting with Orf. Orf, despite being a high-ranking criminal leader, is surprisingly dedicated to his mundane day job as a low-level clerk in the Ministry of Magic. He treats his office work with total seriousness, refusing to work overtime and even offering to make Julia a parfait since she bought the ingredients. Orf lives by a strict personal philosophy. He spends his free time deeply studying the same philosophy books over and over, believing that a person changes every day, so rereading a book always brings new meaning. Julia brings up Alan, and Orf gives her permission to handle him. He warns her that Alan is unique because he can perceive the source of magic despite being a human, and he lacks the fatal flaws that usually plague witches. Julia smiles with a mix of motherly love and deep hatred, planning to create a stage for Alan to experience intense emotions so he can grow into a perfect vessel. Orf heads out, mentioning he has to prepare for work the next day to train his juniors. As soon as Orf leaves, a man named Roland enters. He is furious that Orf wastes time on a normal job instead of using his massive power to throw the world into chaos. Julia ignores his yelling and focuses on her solo chess game. When Roland tries to assert himself, Julia mocks him for being a novice who hasn't even reached the state of Advent, a peak magical level where a mage perfectly syncs with their source. Roland, who has been using forbidden methods and even exploiting witches to get stronger, is stung by the truth of his limitations and storms out. Julia finishes her chess game alone, noting that Roland is a fool for relying on others, especially witches, whom she considers defective products destined for quick death. Meanwhile, at the Elysian Resort, Alan prepares for a formal party. Alina has picked out a sharp black and navy outfit for him, and she is so impressed by how he looks that she insists on committing every last detail to memory. At the party, held in a massive, glittering hall, Alan feels the weight of everyone's gaze. People are whispering about the boy from the slums who defeated a noble like Luke. Alina explains that Sirius wanted him here to get used to high society as his talent has already made him a public figure. While Alina goes to get food, Tia approaches Alan. Dressed in a stunning white gown, she looks every bit the high-ranking noble she is. She greets him with perfect grace, making Alan feel a bit awkward about his own clumsy manners. She kindly tells him not to worry about the staring and invites him to hang out at the beach later before heading off to handle her noble social duties. Other friends like Theo, Lloyd, and AI also stop by to say hello. Even Luke makes a loud appearance, shouting about a rematch before being dragged away by his twin attendants. Suddenly, the lights dim for a special performance by a diva who won a strict audition for the resort's opening. A girl in a beautiful white stage dress steps into the spotlight. Alan is shocked to see it's Melt. She looks like a completely different person, radiant and focused. As she begins to sing, her voice is so clear and emotional that it captivates the entire room. Even without knowing anything about music, Alan is deeply moved, feeling the air itself change as her voice reaches everyone's hearts. When she finishes and bows, the room explodes in applause. Elena explains to a stunned Alan that the resort held a talent search to find a singer for this event, and Melt was the one who won. Walking back from the party, Alan discussed Melt's performance with Elena. Elena explained that the resort only picks the best singers through a strict audition, and Melt's talent was truly divine. Alan realized that Melt's singing voice had a unique quality that seemed to melt people's hearts. He suspected this wasn't just skill, but her abyss power leaking out unconsciously. Even though he was curious about the nature of her magic, he kept it to himself to honor his promise to her. Later that night, Alan couldn't sleep. Looking out his window, he spotted a figure on the beach and recognized Melt's pink hair immediately. He rushed out to meet her. They walked along the shore under the moonlight, and Melt opened up about her past. She revealed that her mother, who was no longer around, had taught her how to sing. Her voice was the only treasure her mother had left her. When Alan praised her song as beautiful, Melt was moved to tears. Feeling like he had stepped over a line, Alan apologized and prepared to leave, but Melt grabbed his hand, trembling. She asked him to stay with her a little longer. As they sat on the sand, Alan shared his dream of becoming a great mage to change his home in the slums. Melt felt a pang of sadness, realizing that while Alan had a bright future, her path as a witch was destined for a dark end. After Alan went back to the hotel, Melt stayed behind to clear her head. Suddenly, Rollin appeared from the shadows. He mocked Melt for getting close to Alan, calling him a rising star from the slum. When Melt tried to talk back, Rollin knocked her down with a burst of mana, sending her sprawling across the sand. He loomed over her, reminding her that she was just a filthy witch meant to be his tool. He revealed a cruel plan involving his own magic and ordered her to follow it. Broken and humiliated, Melt could only whisper her obedience as he left. As Melt sat alone in the cold sand, a mysterious woman named Julia appeared. She had long purple hair and a terrifyingly beautiful presence. Julia claimed to know everything about Melt's love and hatred. She touched Melt's cheek with a creepy, motherly smile, telling her that mages are always led by their source. Melt felt an overwhelming sense of danger from Julia, whose power felt far more sinister than anything she had ever encountered. Meanwhile, Alan returned to his hotel suite, still worried about the sadness he saw in Melt's eyes. He planned to find another chance to talk to her, but as he approached the beds, he noticed something wrong. Elena, who had been sound asleep when he left, was gone. Elena was standing right behind Alan, her eyes cold and empty. She asked where he had been, and though Alan claimed he was just out for a walk, she saw right through him. She knew he had been meeting Melt. Elena warned him that while she wouldn't interfere too much in his friendships, wandering out late was dangerous. To make sure he didn't sneak out again, she settled into a chair by his door and kept watch until he fell asleep. As Alan drifted off, Elena quietly whispered a prayer for his future happiness. The following days at the resort became a strict routine. Every morning, Elena tutored Alan in history and language, piling up thick books for him to memorize. In the afternoons, they moved to the hotel's massive training grounds for magic practice. Alan noticed a strange problem. His magic felt slightly off. Even though he was perfectly reproducing Elena's spells, there was a tiny glitch in the flow of his mana that he couldn't fix. Elena admitted she had nothing left to teach him. To her, Alan's magic looked perfect, but she realized his talent was now beyond her level. Since his regular master was unreachable, Elena brought in a special guest instructor, Pheles Kronork, a special grade mage. Pheles was incredibly beautiful with long gold hair, but he seemed sickly and even coughed up blood during their introduction. Despite his frail appearance, he possessed a terrifying presence. Pheles gave Alan a simple challenge: land one hit on me within an hour. Alan started the fight by using Elena's water magic, firing a high-pressure water spear at full power. The aim was perfect, but the spear passed right through Pheles' body as if he were a ghost. Pheles explained that Alan relied too much on understanding an opponent's source or origin of magic to win. Because Pheles kept his own source completely hidden, Alan's usual strategy was useless. Pheles told him that a true mage must be able to fight through the unknown and move forward even when they don't have all the answers. Alan pushed himself to the limit, reproducing the magic of his master and even Lord Sirius, but nothing worked. Every attack simply slid through Pheles. Pheles warned Alan that talent alone isn't enough if he didn't truly understand himself and his own magic. His power would eventually destroy him. By the end of the hour, Alan was collapsed on the ground, exhausted from the mental strain of processing so many complex spells at once. After the session, Elena caught up with Pheles in the hallway. Pheles confirmed that Alan was a once-in-a-century genius, who might even surpass the legendary Master Bell. However, he noted that Alan hadn't reached the state of Advent, yet a peak level of magic that requires more than just talent. Fayles mentioned that being from the slums might actually help Alan reach that depth, hinting that true magic isn't about reaching for the sky but falling into a deep abyss. Alina was left confused, wondering what the dark history of the slums had to do with the peak of magical power. Following his intense training with Fayles, Alan spent the next week trying every possible trick to land a single hit, but nothing worked. Fayles remained untouchable, hiding his source perfectly. Late at night, Alan sat in his room, obsessively filling notebooks with theories. Alina, noticing his exhaustion, brought him a snack and reminded him that Fayles is one of the world's greatest mages. Alan realized that while he could easily reproduce Alina's water magic, he struggled with more complex powers like his master's star magic. Curiously, he found he could reproduce Lyra's complex healing magic perfectly, despite only seeing it once. He concluded that the time spent watching a spell or its complexity weren't the only factors for his reproduction ability. There was a hidden condition he hadn't figured out yet. As he drifted off to sleep, a realization hit him. Everyone spoke of magic as reaching for a height, but his own experience felt different. When he used his true power, it felt like falling into a deep, dark abyss within himself. A mysterious voice inside his mind confirmed his thought, whispering that magic isn't about rising to the top but falling into the depths. The next morning, Alina banned Alan from studying or practicing for 2 days to prevent a burnout. She admitted she had a few errands to run and gave him free rein of the resort, though she strictly warned him to be back by nightfall. While exploring the hotel lobby, Alan ran into Luke. The noble was as energetic as ever, but his attendant Lily kept him on a tight leash, managing his schedule like a pro. Alan invited the trio to hit the beach the next day. Lily was touched by Alan's kindness in including her and her twin sister, Lulu, in the invitation, noting that she finally understood why Luke liked him so much. Alan spent the afternoon rounding up the rest of his friends, Theo, Lloyd, and Ai, who all agreed to join the beach trip. He then spotted Melt, dressed in a casual summer outfit for her day off. When he invited her, she hesitated, worried about being an outsider among his noble friends, but Alan insisted she was a precious friend. As they talked, a sudden crowd pushed Melt, causing her to lose her balance. Alan caught her in his arms, and for a brief moment, they shared a quiet, intense look. Alan noticed a deep, dark sadness in her eyes that felt like a bottomless pit. The moment was interrupted by Tia, who appeared in a stunning white dress. Though she smiled gracefully, her voice was ice cold as she asked why they were hugging. Alan quickly explained the accident, and Tia's jealousy softened into a warning for him to be more careful as he was now a famous figure at the academy. Alan invited her to the beach as well, and she happily accepted before leaving to attend to her noble duties. Left alone with Melt, she expressed her shock at how casually Alan treated a high-ranking noble like Tia. Alan mentioned they had met back in the slums when Tia was training under his master, Bell. This revelation terrified Melt, making her realize just how deep Alan's connections to powerful figures really went. To lighten the mood, Alan showed her the resort map and suggested they spend the rest of her day off exploring the sights together. Alan and Melt decided to spend her day off together. As they walked through the luxury shopping district, Alan noticed Melt's mood brighten instantly. She was fascinated by everything: the trendy boutiques, the smell of fresh pastries, and the glittering jewelry shops. Alan, used to guiding his friend Lyra back in the slums, naturally took the lead, which seemed to make Melt a little pouty and jealous when he mentioned his past outings with another girl. They stopped at a cozy cafe for lunch, where Melt spotted a couple's special love amorous on the menu. Blushing and nervous, she asked if they could order it even though they weren't a couple. Alan, being his usual dense self, agreed without hesitation, telling her that since he cared about her deeply as a friend, the label didn't matter. When the food arrived decorated with a giant ketchup heart, Melt was both touched and embarrassed, teasing Alan that he would grow up to be a dangerous man because he was way too nice to girls without realizing it. After lunch, they headed to the beach as the sky turned a warm orange. Melt was so happy that she kicked off her sandals and ran across the sand. She accidentally tripped and fell, leading to an awkward moment when Alan rushed to help her up. They eventually made it to a wooden observation deck to watch the sunset over the ocean. Melt told Alan that the view was only this beautiful because she was seeing it with him. As the area got crowded with people leaving a nearby theater, Alan reached out and held Melt's hand so they wouldn't get separated. Melt gripped his hand tightly, looking as if she wanted this moment to last forever, even though a sense of tragic fate seemed to hang over her. Meanwhile, at a different cafe in the resort, the villain Rollin was obsessively writing down magical formulas to figure out how to kill Alan. He was interrupted by Julia, who showed up looking for sweets. She mocked Rollin's arrogance, telling him that he was nowhere near Alan's level. When Rollin claimed he could easily take down a kid from the slums, Julia showed him a jagged, permanent scar on her shoulder. She revealed that even though she is a top-tier descendant, Alan's power was so intense that he had literally ripped her arm off, and the wound refused to heal properly even with high-level magic. Julia warned Rollin that while he was busy trying to reach the heights of magic, he was missing the point. She explained that true mages don't rise to the top, they fall into an abyss of emotion and power. She compared magic to falling in love, a total loss of control that takes you to a deep, dark place. Rollin ignored her warning and stormed out, determined to prove his superiority. Julia stayed behind, smiling to herself as she wondered if Melt would fall into love or hatred, and what choice Alan would make when caught between the two. The next morning, the sun was shining, and it was finally time for the big group beach trip. As Alan got ready, Alina appeared, already knowing his plans. She had seen him inviting his friends the day before and was prepared to keep a very close eye on him during their day at the sea. Alina is all set for the private beach day, wearing sunglasses and acting as the group's guardian. She hands Alan his gear and sends him off to get changed, planning to give him a private swimming lesson before the others arrive. When they step onto the sand, the morning sun makes the ocean look beautiful. Alina appears in a simple black swimsuit, carrying herself like a professional model. Alan honestly tells her the outfit suits her, which makes her flustered and shy. Alina quickly sets up a spot with a parasol and mat. She brings out the sunscreen and fusses over Alan like an overprotective guardian, refusing to let him near the water until he has put it on properly. Alan good-naturedly gives in, and Alina grumbles that he is far too easy on the people who worry about him. Moving to the water, Alina explains that swimming is a vital skill for survival. She demonstrates a perfect stroke, moving through the water with zero wasted effort. Alan watches her closely, analyzing her movements like a magic formula. When he tries it himself, he doesn't just copy her, he adapts the technique to fit his own body and strength. He realizes that his reproduction ability isn't about making a perfect copy of someone else's skill, but about understanding the core of a technique and optimizing it for himself. This realization makes him incredibly happy, and he impulsively hugs Alina to thank her for helping him understand his own power better. Soon, the rest of the group arrives. Fio, Tia, AI, and Melt show up in their swimsuits. Tia is wearing a cute white frilled one, while Melt looks a little shy in hers. Luke arrives with his assistants, Lily and Lulu, and immediately challenges everyone to beach volleyball. He has even set up a professional-looking court on the sand. The matches are lively. Luke's team wins at first because they actually practice beforehand, much to AI and Lloyd's annoyance. Later, Alan teams up with Melt and Tia. Melt is nervous since she's never played, but Tia encourages her. During the game, Alan uses his newly refined understanding of movement to jump higher and hit harder. He even uses a clever trick shot to win the final point. Melt ends up having a great time, her face lighting up with a genuine smile. As the day ends, the group starts to head home. Melt says her goodbyes, needing to prepare for her shift at the hotel the next day. While Alan and Alina walk away, Alina mentions she wanted this trip to examine certain things, though she doesn't explain what. Suddenly, a man with dark hair stops them to return a towel Alan dropped. For a split second, the man stares deeply into Alan as if seeing through him before walking away with a polite smile. Alan feels a strange, unexplainable chill from the encounter, but he pushes the feeling aside and heads home. The next morning, Alan meets with Fayles. He feels more confident than ever. He realizes that since he has no fixed magic of his own, even the mana he uses can be a part of his reproduction ability. He activates Alina's Aqua Sylphie, ready to test his theory that he can rebuild any magic to perfectly suit his own soul. Alan realized that he had been subconsciously mimicking Alina's magic, which didn't perfectly fit his own body. He decided to stop copying her specifically and instead focus on the core concept of magic itself, rebuilding it to suit his own soul. Seeing his progress, Fayles decided to get serious. He released a massive amount of mana, creating a phase shift water lance. Alan didn't flinch. His newly optimized magic felt like a natural extension of his body, allowing him to cast spells faster than he could think. He fired his own water lance with incredible speed and efficiency. When Fayles blocked it, Alan didn't stop. He used multiple to create 20 lances at once. As Fayles destroyed them, the shattering water created a thick mist, masking Alan's next move. Alan then tapped into the star magic he learned from his master, optimizing the Astria domain to fit his capacity. He compressed the mana into a single point and launched a meteor beam. The light pierced through the space, and although Fayles blocked it, the blast scorched Fayles' sleeve. Fayles smiled, declaring that Alan had passed the test by finally understanding his own unique origin. After they shook hands and parted ways, Alan returned to his room where Alina had prepared a celebratory hamburger steak dinner. Alina praised his talent for landing a hit on someone as strong as Fayles, but Alan felt he was still just at the beginning of his journey. Before the night ended, Alina gave him a flyer for a summer festival, encouraging him to go have fun with his friends. Meanwhile, Melt was resting in her room, cherishing the memories she made with Alan. Her happiness was cut short when Roland burst in. He grabbed her by the throat, demanding to know what she was hiding. He suspected she had made a secret contract with Alan. Using his origin magic, a floating sword that forces the truth, he interrogated her. Melt realized that the primordial power waking up inside her made her immune to his magic, but she pretended to be affected. She told him a fake version of a curse she put on Alan to satisfy him. Roland laughed, calling her a low-life witch, and saying she should be useful before her life ran out. After he left, Melt cried, torn between her desire for revenge against those who took her mother and her growing love for Alan. The next day, Alan tried to invite his friends to the festival, but everyone was busy with noble duties. Even Luke, who desperately wanted to go, was dragged away by his assistants for a social event. Finally, Alan approached Melt after her shift. She initially hesitated, looking pained, but eventually agreed, calling it her final selfish wish. At the festival, the atmosphere was lively with lights and food stalls. Melt arrived wearing a beautiful red floral yukata with her hair tied up. Alan was stunned by how pretty she looked and told her so, making her blush. They walked. Melt accepted the small heart-shaped trinket Alan gave her, holding it like a precious treasure. They spent the rest of the night enjoying the festival together, playing games, sharing food, and getting lost in the lively atmosphere. For the first time, Alan truly understood how much fun a summer festival could be. As the night began to wind down, Alan led Melt to a quiet, grassy hill he had found on a map. Away from the crowds, the view of the night sky was perfect. Suddenly, fireworks exploded above them, painting the sky in brilliant colors. Melt watched in awe, whispering a wish that this moment could last forever. Then, the mood shifted. Melt let go of Alan's hand and faced him, her eyes filled with tears. She told him that this would be the last time they would ever see each other. Alan was confused, thinking she meant just for the summer, but she clarified it was forever. She revealed the truth. She was a witch, and she was running out of time. Melt thanked Alan for the happiness he gave her, calling their time together her greatest treasure. Despite her love for him, she refused to drag him into her dark destiny. She activated her power, Primordial Descent, trapping Alan in a void of white light. She told him to go back to his normal life and forget everything, the curses, the witches, and even her. Alan tried to move, but the sheer pressure of her magic pinned him down. He realized that as a witch, Melt was operating on a level of magic far beyond anything he had ever seen. As she began to fade into light, she gave him one last smile, telling him he wasn't a failure and that he possessed a true light within him. With a final goodbye, she vanished and the white world collapsed. Alan woke up back on the hill. The festival was over and the streets were quiet. His memory felt fuzzy. He knew he had been with someone special, but he couldn't remember her name or face. Suddenly, his consciousness was pulled into his inner world where his original self was waiting. His inner self explained that while mages usually try to rise to the top, true power comes from falling into the depths. Witches were those who fell too deep and were consumed by the primordial power. However, Alan's unique, original nature allowed him to touch that power without losing himself. To save her, Alan chose to dive into the abyss of his own soul, even if it meant facing something scarier than death. The memories rushed back. He finally understood the weight Melt was carrying and immediately sprinted off to find her. The story shifts to Melt's past. Witches were mages who possessed primordial power, which far surpassed modern magic. However, this power was a death sentence. Melt's mother had been a witch, and as she lay dying, she explained the curse to Melt. Most high-level mages are held back by their family names, pride, and the expectations of others. To reach the true depths of magic, a person has to throw away everything: their identity, their past, and their humanity. This requires a form of madness. While normal mages have to choose this path, witches are forced into it the moment they get their power. The primordial power isn't a tool. It's a force that uses the witch as a vessel, slowly eating their mind, memories, and life until they break. Melt's mother believed that one day, a mage from the lower layers, someone not bound by noble blood or history, would appear and surpass this tragic fate. She spent her final days taking Melt to all their favorite spots, trying to give her happy memories before the end. That happiness was shattered by a young man with dark, hollow eyes. He approached them with a chilling smile, stating he wanted to reach the ultimate heights of magic and intended to use the witches to get there. Before they could react, he launched a magical sword straight at Melt. Melt's mother pushed her aside just as the sword pierced her own chest. Melt screamed, but strangely there was no blood. The blade emitted a creepy light, revealing itself as a contract sword. The dark-haired man, Roland, coldly offered a deal. Since the mother was dying anyway, he would spare Melt if the mother agreed to a contract. To protect her daughter, she accepted. A glowing crest appeared between them, sealing the deal. From that day on, Roland returned regularly to forcefully drain the mother's mana, leaving her a withered shell of her former self. Eventually, the mother reached her limit. With her final breath, she told Melt to live on, promising that someone would eventually appear to save her. After she passed away, Melt stood at her grave, only for Roland to appear again. He mocked the mother's sacrifice, revealing a cruel truth: The contract would have ended with her death anyway. He had only used her as a placeholder because his real target was Melt. He then impaled Melt with 5 magical swords. Though they didn't cause physical pain, they acted as a forced contract, binding her soul and turning her into a living battery for his power. Melt tried to attack him in a rage, but Rollin easily beat her down, calling her a filthy witch and a mere tool. Back in the present, Melt ran through the night after leaving Alan at the festival. She had been ordered to lure Alan to Rollin, but she chose to face her tormentor alone to protect the boy she loved. At the moonlit beach, Rollin was waiting, annoyed that she came alone. Melt prepared to use her ultimate primordial power to kill him, even if it meant her own death. However, she suddenly found herself unable to transform. Rollin laughed, revealing he had been monitoring her mana levels for years. He knew exactly how much energy she needed to transform, and had drained her just enough so she could never trigger her trump card. Rollin brutally attacked Melt, kicking her across the sand and mocking her lack of effort compared to his years of study. He raised his blade for the final kill, claiming that witches were accidents of nature that shouldn't exist. As Melt closed her eyes, ready to die, a shimmering wall of water appeared, blocking the strike. Alan stood before her, having regained his memories and found her just in time. He apologized for being late and gently called her name. Melt burst into tears, overwhelmed that he had actually come for her. Alan looked at her with clear, determined eyes and promised to save her. Alan told Melt to stay back and faced Rollin. Rollin dropped his polite act, showing his true, twisted personality. He viewed witches and talented mages like Alan as defective products who didn't deserve their natural power. Alan realized Rollin was pure evil, someone who couldn't be talked down. To win, Alan knew he couldn't let hatred cloud his mind. He focused on his reproduction ability, refining Alina's water magic into his own style. Rollin attacked with incredible speed, fueled by the massive amounts of mana he had stolen from witches. Alan deployed a water surface guard, but the sheer raw power of Rollin's strike nearly shattered it. Realizing Rollin was using brute force rather than refined technique, Alan split his focus, maintaining multiple layers of defense while simultaneously casting an offensive spell. He fired several water slices, drawing blood from Rollin. Rollin wiped the blood away, his smile growing wider. He admitted Alan was talented, but claimed the boy was still too young to understand the true horror of his power. Rollin slowly lowers his sword as the mana in the air begins to swirl around him. He declares himself the true genius and activates his origin, Sword of Absolute Obedience Misra Aninc. 5 swords appear behind him, floating with a mind of their own. Alan realizes these swords aren't just weapons. They are the result of Rollin stealing power from witches. Rollin explains that his power is contract. If a target agrees, he can form a binding magical bond. If they refuse, he triggers a forced contract. To complete it, he must stab the target with his swords in a specific order: right hand, right leg, and finally the heart. Once the heart is pierced, the target must obey his every command. Alan tries to find a way to counter this complex magic, but Rollin mocks him, obsessed with his own talent. To force Alan's hand, Rollin fires a sword at the weakened Melt instead of Alan. Alan rushes to protect her, but suddenly a 6th sword pierces Alan's own right hand. Rollin laughs, revealing he lied about only having 5 swords. With a near-infinite supply of mana stolen from witches, he can create as many as he wants. Before Alan can react, swords pierce his left hand and both legs. The final blade sinks into his chest. The contract is complete. Rollin commands Alan to tell the truth. Is Melt a witch? If Alan speaks the truth, the curse Melt placed on him long ago will trigger and kill him. Alan struggles, his lips moving against his will. He doesn't want to die, but more importantly, he doesn't want Melt to live the rest of her life feeling guilty for his death. He looks at Melt and she whispers, "Trust me." Alan obeys the contract and says, "Melt is a witch." Rollin waits for Alan to drop dead, but instead a pure white world expands around them, the deepest domain of a witch's soul. In this quiet space, Melt smiles at Alan. She reveals that her curse wasn't meant to kill him. It was a transfer curse. If he ever revealed her secret, her entire power and life force would be given to him. She chose to die so he could live and have the strength to survive. Melt confesses that she was tired of her life of pain and revenge. Meeting Alan gave her a reason to want a normal life, but since her time was already running out, she decided to entrust her primordial power to the one person she truly loved. Despite Alan's pleas to stay and play together again, Melt fades away into light, her power flowing into Alan's chest. Back on the beach, Alan wakes up holding the unconscious Melt. Rollin is shocked that Alan is still alive. He realizes Melt tricked the contract by using her melting power to dissolve the logic of the spell. Rollin dismisses her death as a filthy witch's end and prepares to finish Alan. Alan lays Melt down and uses a high-level healing spell he copied from Lyra to keep her soul from vanishing. He stands up, his eyes cold and empty. He pushes his anger and hatred deep into the abyss of his soul, reaching a level of magic beyond human understanding. The air pressure alone begins to warp the space around him. Rollin is terrified by the sheer density of Alan's mana. Alan activates 2 massive powers at once, Luke's the Judgment and Belle's Astrea, It's a feat that should be impossible. Roland panics and summons thousands of swords, raining them down on Alan in a desperate attempt to force a new contract. When the dust clears, Alan is untouched. He has activated Melt's primordial melting power, dissolving every single sword and the magical formula attached to them before they could even get close. Alan is now using 4 different high-level powers simultaneously. Roland stumbles back, finally realizing that Alan isn't just a talented kid, he is a monster that has stepped past the boundaries of humanity. A beam of starlight suddenly blasts through the air, vaporizing Roland's right arm. Roland screams in agony, finally remembering Julia's warning to never touch Alan. He realizes too late that he hasn't been fighting a mage, he's been facing the terrifying endpoint of magic itself. The stars in the sky shine brighter than ever. With every flicker, a beam of high-powered mana shoots down like a falling meteor, specifically targeting Roland. He squeezes out every last drop of his energy to survive the barrage, but he is left broken. His magical swords are shattered, and his mana is completely gone. Just as he feels a moment of relief for being alive, Alan appears right in front of him, glowing with golden energy. Before Roland can even scream, Alan lands a brutal punch to his stomach, sending him flying across the beach. Roland's instincts scream at him to run away from this monster, but his body won't move. Suddenly, Julia appears next to the fallen Roland with a playful smile. Roland thinks he's saved, but Julia quickly crushes his hopes. She isn't there to help, she's only there to collect his origin magic as a trophy. She mocks him, reminding him that she warned him not to touch Alan. While Roland begs for mercy, Julia points out that his life finally had some value because he pushed Alan to fall deeper into his power. With a chillingly calm expression, she reaches down and ends Roland's life instantly, sealing his origin away as a trophy. She looks at the exhausted Alan, gives him a wink and vanishes, saying she looks forward to seeing him fall even further into darkness. Alan is barely conscious, his head throbbing with pain from overusing his power. He saw Roland's end but doesn't have the energy to process it. His only priority is Melt. He stumbles over to her and finds her heartbeat is weak but steady, thanks to the healing magic he copied earlier. Alan decides on a desperate plan. If the primordial power is destroying her body, he will rebuild that power into a stable magic formula and give it back to her as a gift rather than a curse. He places his hand on her chest and returns the power to her, praying for it to become a blessing. Inside her consciousness, Melt sees her late mother. She feels ready to die and join her, but her mother stops her at the border of the afterlife. Her mother tells her that she isn't dead yet and that she has found someone special to live for. Melt realizes she wants a future as a normal human, not a witch. She wakes up on the beach to find Alan hugging her tightly. He explains that he saved her by turning her curse into a stable magic source. Overwhelmed by his kindness and the fact that he saved her without asking for anything in return, Melt finally accepts her feeling. She has fallen deeply in love with the boy who broke her chain. Life returns to normal as the new school term begins. Back at the mansion, Alina prepares a celebratory breakfast, and Alan meets with Sirius to report everything that happened. To Alan's surprise, Sirius doesn't scold him for acting alone. However, as Sirius leaves for work, he gives Alan a cryptic and serious warning: stay away from the daughter of the Seraphiles family. Confused because he's already friends with Tia Seraphiles, Alan heads to school. He meets Melt on the way, who looks much healthier and happier now that she's free from her curse. She tries to stay close to him, blushing and acting shy, but their moment is interrupted by Tia. Tia seems annoyed and quickly walks off to class. Melt, now feeling competitive for Alan's attention, vows not to lose to her. In class, Professor Alice makes a major announcement. For their next practical exam, the students will be heading into the lower layers of the dungeon. This is a dangerous high-mana zone filled with vicious monsters. For Alan, it's a return to the place where he grew up. The students are paired up, and Alan is assigned to work with Tia. When he looks at her, he notices something strange for a split second. Her image seems to flicker and overlap with something dark and bottomless. Remembering Sirius's warning, a chill runs down his spine. The trouble with the witches might be over, but Alan realizes he is about to dive into an even deeper mystery.